the reason why this topic came up, I was on a live maybe about a week or two ago, and the topic of grape culture came up,
Mhm.
and it was several people on the panel and in the comments that were like, grape culture doesn't exist. It's not real. It's just a crime like anything else. You know what I mean? And they try to go down the route of it's a conspiracy against the black man and all these other things
Yeah.
that I thought were just terrible misinformation. And so, really wanted to have this conversation. I appreciate you joining me. Just for those that may not be familiar with you, could you just tell a little bit about yourself? How you got started on TikTok, what some of your goals are, and where people can, if you have products and things of that nature, where they can find those products.
So for those of you don't know me, I'm Onyx Frost. I've been on TikTok now for I want to say like a year and some change. Not like the most consistent, right? Because TikTok can be very like toxic, and there's a lot of times where I'm on here and I'm like, I need to take some time away, right? But I came on TikTok because like I remember seeing a video. Actually, it was also about grape culture. Like one of my first videos on here was actually, and the first video on here that like really caught on was actually about, what men will say when women speak about grape culture and how they respond to that. And so, I think it's actually a full circle kind of deal, right? I don't currently have any products. This is my year of entrepreneurship, really getting into, and like, I don't even want to say entrepreneurship, but like building for myself, right, and not for somebody else.
Yeah,
So like I will eventually, and I'll
good
make that
stuff.
on my page. But thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. Welcome to the show. But want to get right into it, man, and get into some of these questions. Now, this is can you just, I guess, in your own words, kind of define what grape culture is and what makes this a distinct thing from like other crimes that might take place in this country? Like,
So,
what is grape culture?
and I'm glad you had the questions because like I had fully planned to write them down, but I've been busy this week. I've been like driving
Oh,
around trying to make money, so I'm glad you have it written down. But grape culture to me is the set of ideals, beliefs, cultures, even that will normalize and oftentimes um, dismiss, right? Normalize the behaviors that lead to rape, right? Or grape rather, and dismiss the cries of we need to change and this is bad for us from the people that it happens to, right? Including when those people aren't women. Because like when men get raped and men are the perpetrators and men speak up, they're told to shut up, you liked it, or you're just this, that, and the third, you're LGBT, whatever, whatever, right?
right.
And so grape culture very, very seriously affects everybody that grape happens to, and I think it applies differently between men and women, right? Like for women, it's a dismissive, it's a, you're lying, you're trying to get something out of this men. For men, it's a, you must be gay, you must be LGBT, you liked it, whatever, right? So I think, it is the set of ideals, beliefs, and cultural traditions that lead to it and allow for it and normalize it. As far as the distinction between other crimes, one grape outside of homicide from black man to black man, grape is the single most ubiquitous crime that happens, like the single most, right? One in four women, that's 25% of the population, 25%
Right.
of the female population, right? No other crime, again, besides homicide from black man to black man, no other crime happens at that rate. Like no other crime. No other crime can a person say there's a one in four chance that I am guaranteed for this to happen to me. You know what I mean? Like no other crime, violent crime or the like. And so I think the fact that it's so prevalent that it happens so much and people just kind of, oh, it'll just always happen. Like 25% of somebody, like of a group, should never be facing the same. That's insane. The facing the same negative thing. That's insane. But yeah.
No, absolutely. I was thinking about it, and it's almost like when someone says, "Oh, America's not a racist country," right? And you have to ask, well, when did this change? Like the reason why, or at least a prevalent reason why we have these skin tones and we're not, of a darker complexion in America is because of grape culture. Like America started out with grape culture from
Exactly.
chattel slavery, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And just continued on from there. And so you have to say, well, when did that stop? You know what I mean? When did police officers or, what I mean, start coming into black neighborhoods and picking up and kidnapping women and raping them that way. You know what I mean? You think about how different riots start, these are things that go on and have been going on in our country, and it's baked into our society. The dehumanization of women specifically is baked into our society, and grape culture evolves from that dehumanization, objectifying women, looking at them as more so a prize to be won or a property to acquire than an actual human being who has thoughts and dreams and aspirations that are and is autonomous in their own right. And in this society, this culture tramples over that. And so I was thinking about the grape culture pyramid and how like sexist attitudes and locker room talk and all those things are at the base. And a lot of times men will say, well, I've never done that. I'm not a part of that. Not realizing that they are the base that makes that people who do perpetrate that more, I guess, comfortable in doing that. From your observations, this kind of brings me to, I guess, another point that was brought up in the live about, not all men or whatnot. But from your observations, whenever a woman says it's all men until it's no men, what messages was she trying to convey when she said that? And do you agree with that phrase? It's all men until it's no men, and why or why not?
All right, so first and foremost, absolutely agree with the phrase. Like, absolutely agree, right? And the message that they're trying to convey is we are trying to preserve ourselves. It's a statement of self preservation, right? I cannot trust that you, as a man walking down the street, you, as a man opening that door for me, you, as a man, in any vicinity near me as a woman, I am safer. I can't assume that, right? Like, as a woman in this world, I can't assume that. And so I have to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you are not that man. Every man is until you've proven to me that you're not, right? It does fly in the face of innocent until proven guilty, but simply because I've been in lives where like people, men will say, oh, y'all pick men that are violent. Y'all like to be around men that are violent. Y'all like that. And it's like, no. If you ask any of these men to describe what a grapist looks like, right? Give the women a description of what a grapist looks like so that they know what to avoid, who to avoid specifically every time they see it. Crickets, right? Like crickets.
Right.
Because you can't give it. You can't give a they just know there's sign there. Give us the signs. If there's sign, well, they're women, they should be able to, but they don't because it's happening to them, right? Like it's happening to men too who also don't know the signs. So you'd be helping your fellow brother out. And I tell them, give me a description of a rapist. Crickets. Can't do it, right? And so for women, because men don't have rapists stamped across our foreheads, like they have to be cautious of all of us. And as you alluded to, you have the men who will say, well, I've never raped a woman. I've never, essayed a woman. I don't do that. Okay, but were you in the barbershop when they were talking about how they got all those girls drunk last night and hey, we had some fun, didn't we? Did you say anything? Did you step up? Hey bro, that don't sound right. Like that sound kind of right. No, you didn't. You laughed or you went back in your phone, you was quiet like a mouse, right? And so when I see men get offended by it, they're offended for one of two reasons, maybe three. One of two reasons that we'll start mainly. You're offended because you are that man, right? Like just plain and simple, you are a rapist, right? And you don't like being put, you know what I'm saying? Because you don't see yourself as the stereotypical man in a dark alley with a hoodie on, preying on women. You're the man that'll sneak them into the house, get them a little alcohol. You knew they told you no before they were drunk, but now that they drunk, they all up on you, so it must be okay, right? You that. But you don't want to, you feel what I'm saying? Like you don't want to be that, but you are. You have the men that are friends with men like that, right? And they'll say things like, these are the men that'll say, oh, I'm not telling, my boy's girl that he cheated on her. That's their business. He a grown man, blah, 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 blah. That don't have nothing to do with me. It's like, nah, if I look at your friends and the character of your friends, I can find the same character in you, right? Because we say it with everything else.
Right.
Until it comes to the mistreatment of somebody, the mistreatment of women. No, I don't treat, women the way my friends do. Then why are you friends with them? Right? Like, why are you friends with them? Because friend is a very strong word. You know what I'm saying? That's people you're around the most. And then the third type are the people who just, I don't do bad, right? I don't do bad, so don't group me. I don't like generalizations. And it's like, just because you don't do bad does not mean you have done good, right? You're neutral, you're in the middle, right? And what's the quote by MLK go? I think it's MLK, but for evil to triumph, all that has to happen is like good men to do nothing, right? I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. Like if you do nothing when evil's happening, you're not good.
Right.
But you're allowing it to happen. You're not good. So I think that's the real reason you see so many men fight against that question and get so offended by that question, because it's like you fit in one of them one of them three camps, right? Like you fit there. Otherwise, it's just women said they don't feel safe around men. I'm a man. Let me figure out why. Yo, sis, what can I do to make you feel safe? Because like I don't want you to not feel safe, right? That's important to me. And she'll say it. Very simple stuff. And it's never nothing that's difficult to do, right? If somebody's saying you like grape jokes, like check that. Nah, you're right, because that's not funny, right? Man, nah, it's just a joke. I gotta laugh. Like, no, she just told you that don't make her feel safe, right? That don't make her feel like she's in this space, safe and cared for. So, like, I just think like a lot of men take offense to it because they don't want to do anything and they think that they are doing good, right? They don't want to change, I should say. They don't want to change because they think they're good. I'm long-winded, I'm sorry about that.
No, you bring up a great point, and the quote I was thinking of was injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere, right? And what we don't recognize is when we allow these type of things to fester, that creates, or when we try to justify it or excuse it away or put a rug over it, that makes a more dangerous situation for everyone, right? Because as you said, like if it can happen to a woman, then it can happen to anyone else. You know what I mean? And it's excused away. If you don't believe a child, right, then why would you believe an adult when they say something happened to them? Who's even more responsible for themselves, right? Um, I think a lot of times we get defensive, and we get defensive one because it's almost like in our programming to defend and other men and make excuses for them because we see some of us in them, and we're also making excuses for ourselves, right? And it's not just for this topic, but in many topics when we talk about the quote unquote gender war, it's oh yeah, he's just a little aggressive, that's just him, you know what I mean, or you just got to get to know him, that's just that guy, you know what I mean. But we even if we're not going to do it, we want that space and that freedom to be able to do it if we were to do it, because we have those same desires, and we've been groomed to do that same type of predatory behavior when it comes to women. We've been sought to be the hunters, when it comes to that. So, but when women are saying, hey, it's all men until it's no men, I think a lot of times what we miss is it's a plea for men to change the atmosphere, and to change the culture. Like, listen, until men can get together and say, hey, these are the new standards of how we're going to engage with women. This is the new environment that we're going to create of safety for our community, for our women, for our children, and for other men. Then none of you are safe, because it's like I'm walking through a landmine and I don't know where I'm going to step. That's going to cause my next injury, because we know statistically when it comes to rape, it's not the person hiding in the alleyway. It's not the person hiding in Central Park. In many cases, even though that's the paranoia that's put out there, it's your friend. It's the person, it's your coworker. Sometimes it's your family member. You know what I mean? It's someone that typically, because they're the ones who have the opportunity. And most thieves are thieves of opportunity. They see the moment. You know what I mean? Like you said, you're at a bar, you get drunk, you get intoxicated. Oh, you're not in your right mind. Okay, so yeah, let's let this happen, right? And a lot of times we don't actually respect the actual definition of rape, where it's like, yeah, anything that's done against your will, where you don't have consent, is great. If you're coercing somebody, if you back someone into a corner, and now they're kind of afraid, or there's a little tension there, yeah, if they didn't want to do that, you've pushed them into it. That's a form of essay as well. It's not just the face scratch, all that. It's the way we seek out and try to not even more so persuade, but also push ourselves onto someone else. You know what I
No,
mean?
absolutely, absolutely. And like the thing you said just a moment ago, that's something I think like you could have another live on later, but you spoke about men will jump to defend other men, right?
Right.
Protect other men. Think about that. We can't protect women, we can't, but like we'll jump at the chance to protect another man because it's as simple as that, defending somebody's honor, right? Like as simple as that. And men will do it without question when another man, especially the black man, another black man, like what happened with Jonathan Majors, right?
Right.
Immediately jump to his defense, right? And like don't immediately condemn him, but like immediately jump to his defense, but can't protect women in the same way. That's not physical, because y'all do it with men and it's not physical. Y'all know what protection looks like when it's not physical. But like that's another lie. I don't want to shit, but that's
No,
another.
I mean, I think it's related. You know what I mean? I think because what happens is the false allegation statistic gets inflated, right? We know that like 90% plus, 90 to 98% of, survivors that come forward and say, hey, something happened to me are telling the truth. You know what I mean? They're, statistically, but that 2%, you know what I mean? Or, 10%, whatever, that 9 times out of 10, that 1 out of 10 time where someone's, conflating something or maybe it doesn't stick in court, we're saying, oh, that's the majority. So I don't believe anyone when they come forward. And until you're proven guilty and thrown under the jail, I'm just going to treat this person like a pariah. You know what I mean? And so, like with the Jonathan Majors case specifically, it brought up a lot of emotions because we know that there's a history in this country, i.e. Emmett Till, i.e. The kind of black brute stereotype, because the black brute is the person that's in Central Park, or that's hiding in the alleyway. That's the person that's painted as the stereotypical rapist, even though that's not statistically accurate either. So we understand that there's a stigma specifically between black men and white women, and how that history's evolved, and how a lot of lynchings took place. But because of that stigma, we're even more prone to insulate, protect, even comfort known essay abusers. You know what I mean? Even like with R. Kelly, everybody since Aaliyah's first album, Aaliyah's 15. R. Kelly in the background, you know what I mean? Looking creepy. But we will insulate that because we don't want black men to get put in the system. We don't want, because we know it's not fair. We know it's not just. But that allows an environment where these type of things can fester in culture even more. In my city, Anthony Sowell was a serial killer, serial unaliver. Sorry, I'm doing my own live, but he specifically targeted black women who were addicted to drugs, right? The people that nobody cares for and nobody's looking for, right? And it wasn't until the stench from his house just was so repugnant that people couldn't ignore it, that he finally got caught after many, 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 many years. You know what I mean? And you'll see those type of people, I'll put it that way, cutting their teeth in our community because they know that people aren't looking out for each other and people aren't really, wary of those type of signs, because we, again, in part because we've internalized it, oh, these type of things don't happen. And we almost pathologically sweep these type of things under the rug.
And you had said, even like about when we look at the false accusations and people not wanting to believe women, right? Because I think when people hear that phrase, they hear believe women and, oh, so we should just automatically, it's like, that's not the point of the phrase. The point of the phrase is to hear out what she's saying, consider the possibility and plausibility of it, and not immediately try to find reasons to discredit what she's saying, because that happens to us black men in the media, right? And we hate it when something that happens to a black man, they'll go and, oh, he was this, that, they'll show pictures of him with his middle finger up, and like that's just kids do, the teenagers.
Character assassination.
Character assassination, right? And like we hate when that happens to us, but we'll turn around and do it, right? It's the hypocrisy, it's the lack of ideological consistency, right? And I hate that. And I think the reason so many people try to paint this narrative of false accusations is twofold. You'll have it happen to very high profile men in like the media. And so there's that psychological, process of somebody sees something negative and it takes over, right? Like their interpretation of the thing. And so you'll see it happen to like famous and wealthy men, like, false accusations, but like, even there, some of the accusations, in fact, most of the accusations don't be false, right?
Right.
And then, like, you also, though, I think the twofold part is that when you look up, like, the conviction rate for rape in America, right? The conviction rate is 2%. I think it might be 3% now, right? Like, but it's 2 to 3% conviction rate. That's atrocious, right? And then, like, of the people convicted, and mind you, these are actual rapists. Only 2 to 3% of them are convicted. And then of the people convicted, only 2% of them serve jail time, any jail time, like at all. So 2% of 2%, right? 97. Someone just put it there. 97% of rapists walk free. I think the reason that so many people think that grape isn't the problem that it is because our society does not punish for it, like, at all. Like someone
Right.
said, 97% of rapists walk free, right? When you look at other countries, and I've done this, I've looked up countries that have like the lowest incidence of grape, right? China's on that list. The Middle East in general, like, there's 6 different countries in the Middle East on the list of the lowest incidence of grape, right? And a lot of people look and say, "Oh, it's because their women dress modestly." That's why. It's like, no, because women here that dress in burqas and hijabs, they also get raped here in America. No, it's because the Middle East has the harshest laws for grape in the world, right? The
Right.
harshest laws, and they also have an extremely high conviction rate, right? Like, extremely high. Same thing with China. China has a high conviction rate and very harsh laws for grape, and so the grape doesn't happen there nearly as much as it happens here in America. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so once you punish the crime, it does help to stop the crime from happening. But, like, again, people will say it doesn't happen here like that, so we can't get there.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you this. This is a standard question on in my in the Will to Change project, because we're really looking at, from many different angles, dismantling patriarchy, right? So in your frame, like, what is patriarchy in your own words, and in this case, how is it related to grape culture?
Patriarchy to me is again, just systems of, ideals, cultural beliefs, and ideologies that assert that men should be at the top of some pyramid of human social order, right? And because men believe that, and we believe it on very flimsy foundation, but the idea that we are superior, right? Because we're stronger, we built this, we built that, whatever. And so we design an entire society with the base purpose of fulfilling our needs as men within said society, right? So, like, yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave the definition there. I'm gonna keep it simple. Yeah.
No, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. I think about might is right. You know what I mean? If I had to sum it up in the simplest words possible, it's might is right. It's father knows best, right? And it's because might is right and father knows best that women don't know don't know best. They shouldn't be believed. Their opinion isn't as worth as much, even if they're more qualified, right? And it's because I'm the strongest, not necessarily the smartest, but because I'm the strongest, and because God said so. Let's not forget about that. I should be the one that leads, regardless of my experience, regardless of my qualifications. I should be the one that's at the head. And with great culture, again, to take it on a religious aspect, if we say that woman, was made for man, even if it's as a helpmeet, regardless of how you define helpmeet, assistant, someone that's here to support a companion. But you're saying that the very purpose of woman, the reason why she was created by God, was to serve and please man, especially after the fall of man. You looking at Genesis chapter 3, we say that the curse of Eve is that well, she has to basically long after her husband and be ruled by him, right? So it's by divine right.
Real quick,
Look, go ahead.
I'm sorry, not to interrupt you. You got somebody in the comments rolling in facts saying we pandering. That's one of the type of people that will most certainly try to report the live to get us shut down. So I would try to get him blocked and reported if I were you.
Okay, yeah, let's block this
Like, that's
misogynist. We're gonna block this misogynist real quick.
man.
Okay,
Over here
just
saying
block
that we
this
tell lies,
misogynist.
and there are literal facts on Google that you could check at any time. Multiple sources. This has been studied for years, but he has a source that says that I'm lying. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Let's just block that misogynist real quick.
that's what
Okay,
I'm saying.
okay,
Like,
block the
it's
misogynist.
unnecessary. Like, it's unnecessary. But go on. I did not mean to.
No, no, good look, good look. Definitely. Just so for those that are in the comments, thank you so much for listening. Feel free to put in questions, comments. We'll definitely, pick some of those up and integrate them in this conversation. But it is a one-on-one conversation for that very same reason. We want to really, Yeah, yeah. Give thanks. Yeah, peace, disaster girl. We definitely want to make sure that we have a learning environment, an environment that stimulates conversation and not the back and forth. That's dead. All right. Um, but yeah, patriarchy. You know what I mean? You got might is right, father knows best, and God said so. Essentially. And because of that, because woman was, in a sense, we're going on the assumption that woman was created for man. She was created to serve man. You have male entitlement, and that's how, for me, that's the entitlement bridge is how patriarchy is linked to grape culture because I'm in charge, because I do all these things, I built the world, all these things, a woman owes me something, right? She owes me her body, she owes me her submission, she owes me as a man to her smile, her politeness, her femininity, is a product that is owed to me, and that's how men routinely become boundary crossers, what I mean, and boundary pushers, because she doesn't know what she really wants. Her no doesn't necessarily mean no. Her no can turn into a yes, and and so she needs me to lead her to what's going to be best for her, and I think that's how we get into that. Part.
Unfortunately.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just said unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Um, Part B to that question: how do sexist attitudes, language, and beliefs translate into dangerous behaviors and environments for women and men?
And that's a question, like that's the one I really wanted to, because I had a whole story about this, and there's a reason I brought up the barbershop example. I had went to my barbershop back in where I used to live. I moved to a new state, but like where I used to live, right? And this is my like childhood barber, right? And I'm there, just catching up, getting a haircut, or the lineup. And like it's men, come in and they're talking, and barbershop talk is barbershop talk. Talk about sports, cars, women. But like at one point they did bring up like a party that they had. And back in the day, they had talked about how back in the day it wasn't like they were doing this currently, but like they had talked about back in the day, they had actually spoke about like how women now are calling grape and SA for like having gotten drunk and having and having sex, and they're like, well, no, you agreed to drink, that's in that third. They're in the barbershop talking about how, well, because you agreed to drink, because you that and third, back in the day, that's just, that's what you did. You brought a woman over, she drank, y'all drank, you what. And it's like, nah, bro. Like, think of it this way. I think if a woman says to me no while she's sober, that's what I go with, right? Like, I go with the sober yes or no. I'm not getting you drunk, high, any of that, because like if you said no while sober, you said no in the most right state of mind you're gonna be in while we're interacting, right? So take it as a no from now on. Even if later on she touched on me, not she said no earlier while she was sober. That's what I'm going with, right? And like the language that we'll use when we speak about, well, she wanted it, she liked it, she this and the third. We have this culture of women who, one, think that they have to behave a certain way to even get our attention, right? So when women are younger, they tend to be more in that type of interaction with men, right? They're more willing to drink because this I'm gonna be a prude, or I'll be high strung if I don't drink and get comfortable. And then a lot of women don't feel comfortable if they don't get drunk. I can't relax if I'm not drunk. I can't, right? And that gets taken advantage of because like we have a culture of, like you said, as a woman, your existence is solely for me as a man and what my needs are as a man to help me in whatever that may be. I forgot where I was about to go with that. I'm sorry, but
No, no. We and this even if you're a male rights activist or you're a male stander upper, you feel like you get to stand up for men, you know what I mean, and protect men from these nefarious women. Your advice should be similar in that you want an enthusiastic yes from a woman, especially a woman that you don't know well. Like for me personally, what I mean, I'm married. I'm married for majority of my life now. You know what I mean. But if I wasn't married and I was out there in the quote unquote scene and we're not getting drunk and going back to my apartment on a first date. Absolutely not. Because I don't how do I know what your yes is and what your no even feels like at that point? You know what I mean? You have to be in your right mind. You know what I mean? First up, we're not getting, in any other altered state of consciousness unless we're like a couple. Because at that point, you're putting yourself up for risk because if it's not an enthusiastic yes, when someone who is able to make their right decision, they're not impaired by alcohol, things of that nature, who knows what they really wanted, because and there was a live about this too. This was another reason why I wanted to have this live. There was a something going around TikTok, and they were basically saying that because they were sexting back and forth, I'm going to do this to you and I'm going to do that to you, that was in a sense a contract was formed in that moment, and when they got to the hotel room, unless something really went different, they already had consent. Consent is not a one time, one size fits all thing. You know what I mean? Somebody can say yes on Monday, and in the act say no, I don't want this anymore, and you need to stop at that moment. There's not a half life on consent.
You
Consent
know,
is from moment to moment.
like when you're on the phone with the like any service that you have, like your internet service provider, your insurance, whatever, and you're about to set up auto payments, right? And they got to
Yeah,
read you that little thing to get your consent. Even though you've talked about this the entire conversation, you called them, y'all want to set up auto payments, right? On the phone, they were like, "Oh, this will auto payments can get you. This is the benefits of it." Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I want that. Okay, you might say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead, sign me up for auto payments. Yep, I'll accept it." You might say that 5 times before you get to them reading you the consent thing that you have to say for legal consent to get the auto payment signed up, right? I think of it the same way. That the situation you just brought up, they're texting back and forth is just like you calling in to sign up for auto payments, right? But you still, at the end of the day, before you actually get the auto payment sign up, have to do that legal consent and say, yes, I agree to allow this, whatever, whatever, right? It's the
right.
same way with, you have consent with the woman. And like you said, they think, oh, having that conversation back and forth was consent. Like, no, it wasn't. I don't care if she said the wildest stuff to you and she said, I'm gonna jump you as soon as I see you. The moment you see her, you sure you still want to do this? Yes, yes, nigga, yes. Like, let's go, right? Like, but like that's all you gotta do. Like, but that's just too complicated to some people.
No, absolutely. Even if you sign a marriage contract, even if you actually sign a a binding contract, you still need to get consent from your spouse. You know what I mean? It's not, you don't own that person. You know what I mean? Even if, on a spiritual plan, you say, oh yeah, we're one flesh, we present ourselves to the world as one. That person still has their bodily autonomy. They never surrender that to you. And you still need to get consent. But what's crazy is it was legal. You know what I mean? It was legal to grape your spouse. And when I say spouse, I really mean wife. You know what I mean? Before the 90s. You know what I mean? That it didn't exist. Marital rape was not a thing until our contemporary times, the people that are alive now. So when we talk about, the 1950s is this idyllic period, no, it was not an idyllic period. Women, whether, you're talking about white tea women or any other race, did not have, just basic autonomy back in the day. I look at some of the advertisements, and it's like the man has the woman like over the knee, and it's like disciplining her like a child. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, I've seen them from like the 50s, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And this is the same era where we couldn't go into certain lunchroom counters or certain bathrooms, because separate but not equal. But yet we want to go back to that time because that was a time where men could be men. It's crazy to me.
It is, isn't it though? It's like when Caucasian people say "Let make America great again," and it's like, great for who? Right? Like, let men be men again. Like, men how? Right? It's, what do you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw in the comments, there was like, well, please, teach other men, and if you have sons, please teach them. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your personal journey and kind of how you came to this frame of mind with the way you think about patriarchy, the way you think about great culture. How did you come to this awareness? What changed your thought process and behavior?
Um, so like my journey, I ain't gonna lie to you, it's been kind of different. When I was younger, like I was always that child that was like in the library. I loved to go to get books. I was reading like aeronautical or aerospace engineering books in like fifth grade. Physics books, you know what I'm saying? So like I was much like definitely like nerd geek right in school. I wasn't always gonna be in the circles that, would discuss these things anyway. I also had like a lot of female friends when I was younger. Like I had was raised by my mother. My grandmother was around a lot too. My father was in my life and still in my life, right? But like I lived with my mother. So like there was already the basis for it, right? And then I remember just like throughout my like upbringing, my mom always taught me, my grandmother always taught me, and my father always taught me, be kind, because that one is the best thing to be in life. You kind to people. So when you would see people that aren't kind, I would start to look at the reason why they're not kind, and then you would see some people aren't kind because somebody is short. People aren't kind because that person, everybody calls them ugly, right? But like that's not fair. Like they didn't decide to have that face, right? Like, and you notice the patterns of why people aren't kind, and so I would notice boys and then young, later, like young men are not being kind to women in a very specific way. Like, and I picked up on it. And then unfortunately, in middle school, I had a friend tell me that she had been like repeatedly essayed by her uncle, right? Like when she was like younger. And like this was my close friend at the time, like very, very close friend at the time, right? I remember breaking down on the phone, like, what do you mean your uncle? Right? Like that was crazy to me at the time. Like, what do you mean your uncle? Right? Like, because
Yeah.
at the time that, like I said, that's middle school. I'm thinking a rapist is you like man in the dark alley with a hoodie, feel me, with a thing on.
Right.
She's like, no, it was her uncle. And I'm an uncle to a niece right now. And I can't fathom like like how do you look at your niece like that? That's crazy. Right? Then later I met another friend, like I had another friend in high school who again also told me that that happened to them, right? Not uncle, but just like that they had been essayed, right? And this was when we were learning like our modules on, essay and our modules on what do you call that? Like, human sexuality, right?
Right.
And we had that conversation. She told me that the nail really hit the coffin in college, or after college, I should say, between 2016 and 2020, right? Those 4 years. Between 2016 and 2020, I had six of my friends, like, relate to me, talk to me, confide in me that had happened to them. Six, bro. And what really messed me up is that three of them, it happened to while we were in school. And I knew them. And I didn't know. I didn't see it. I didn't see it in the eyes. I didn't see the pain. I didn't see it. You feel me? And that shit was painful. Like to know that I told these people I love them. To know I looked at these people and said, I love you, sis. You feel me? And then to not know that when I looked her in the eyes and not know it till later, that shit hurt. That shit hurt so much. I was depressed for so long. I'm like between 2020 and like for a minute, right? I was depressed for so long. Like, and it really like was like, nah, like this is a fucking problem. Like this is absolutely unacceptable. Like absolutely unacceptable. And from there, like mind you, I went to Morehouse. So like Spelman was our sister school, and like Spelman is like the school, right, of like
Yeah.
feminist movement, empowerment. Like very, very powerful Black women come from Spelman, right? So like I took very many classes over there, and I learned a lot while I was there. But like after graduating, between that time frame, like I said, 2020 on, I was like, yeah, no, I have to really, really try, like to stop this and solve it, because like six of my friends, bro, six.
Sorry.
I'm saying.
There, there's a statistic that says that 1 in 4 Black women are essayed before the age of 18, and and it may be more than that. You know what I mean? The way I explain it is like if you're sitting in a room with your grandmother, your mother, and your wife, or your mother, your wife, and your daughter, 1 out of 3, will experience that in their lifetime, and in the hopes that that will humanize it for men that maybe think it's an academic conversation. You know what I mean? Like there are what 40 plus people in this room right now. You know what I mean? When I think about how many survivors are in this room listening to us speak right now, it's humbling. You know what I mean? And it's also a little scary. You know what I mean? Because we, first of all, to share my personal story, like for me, um, my view on consent was developed very early because when I was coming into puberty, I was witness to like a domestic, you know, situation going wrong. You know what I mean? And I witnessed it from beginning to end. How that tears at myself, at people, and how relationships can go completely wrong. And when they produce children, you know what I mean? The legacy that you're left with. So I would, you know, I understood almost as soon as I understood about Smex in general that Smex makes babies and Smex has lifelong consequences. And in my, you know, 12-year-old brain, it's like, man, if I'm gonna have that with anyone, it has to be someone that I really, really love and respect because it could be an 18-year plus commitment. You know what I mean? And that's before, you know, that's me internalizing a whole bunch of negative things about women from TV to friends and all of those things, and still, you know, trying to navigate through that. But even then, it's like, and this is um, knowing that the outcome of bringing life into this world, it's a very serious matter. And to take that choice away from a woman is devastating. You know what I mean? When it amazes me the paradox of how we will say, well, you know, 70% of you know, households or children being raised are being in the black community are being raised by single mothers. And these are the same men that will disparage single mothers when they're doing amazing. They're going above and beyond doing the work of two people and still producing, you know, human beings that, for whatever, you know, whatever the outcome, whatever the situation, survived. You know what I mean? That lived. You got on at 18. You're breathing breath because your mother sacrificed for you. You know what I mean? So to say that we live in this community that a lot of the women are doing a lot of the work to raise the children, and then the children, once they get older, don't respect the women, is insane to me. You know, I always talk about the Tupac lyric, you know what I mean, from Keep Your Head Up. But it's like, for me, I didn't start to dismantle patriarchy until much later. I got into the church, and for me, the church was like the last gateway into this mythical manhood. You know what I mean? Because it's like that's, you know, as you become a Christian man, then you become a real man because, you know, God, you know, designed you to be a priest in your home and a protector, provider, all those things. But then when I saw how people actually lived and behaved in that environment, and the outcome of that, it was very much different than what was on paper. You know what I mean? There's a lot of womanizers in the church. It's a lot of rapists in the church. You know what I mean? And even when we get into a text where it says that everybody was created in the image of God, somehow we still can't respect women. I'm like, man, why is that? But I made excuses for it and I justified it because I wanted to believe in the central idea of my own redemption, right? Because the source of my redemption was outside of me. But once I saw the outcome, especially within my own marriage and within my own personal life, and I started to deconstruct Christianity and religion, then I started to deconstruct patriarchy because I was like, wait a minute, the same Bible that is being used to justify racism is the same Bible that's being used to justify sexism, is the same Bible that's being justified to for imperialism and homophobia and all of these things. And I'm like, man, how many excuses can I make for this thing? You know? So I, you know, whatever you might believe, you know what I mean? I think we have to be able to isolate our morality and what is right and wrong from whatever that belief system is. Because if your belief system is based on the arbitrary context of what's religious and what's not religious, you'll wind up doing very wrong things
Oh yeah.
for what you think are right reasons. You
And
know what I
like
mean?
that's terrifying. The scariest person is a man doing evil and thinking he's doing good. That is terrifying because you can't convince him of otherwise, right? You can't. And like that's why during the Crusades, the things that Christians were doing to people during the Crusades is like it's mind numbing, right? Because like you see some really foul like torture techniques and devices, and it's like y'all are supposed to be people of God, right?
Right.
God would have you to do this to other human beings, his other children? Come on. It doesn't make sense, right? So like you're absolutely right. It is a lot of responsibility like for what has occurred with the way men and women treat, well, I'm sorry, the way men treat women and have put women in certain position within our society comes from a book that tells you that all of us are God's children. Like, do y'all really understand the book? You know what I'm saying? Like that was
Right.
always my question. Like, do y'all really understand the book? Right? You don't. And like you said, you'll see in the church rapists, you'll see in the church abusers, you'll see in the church all kinds of stuff, right? But like they in the church though, so it's passed under the rug. He's still a man of God. He's just handling demons. Like, nah, he is a demon.
Right.
like, for real.
Exactly. Everybody follow Onyx Frost. If you don't follow Onyx Frost already, please do follow this man. He puts out amazing content. Please make sure you like the live. Please share the live. It's most appreciated. Want to just take a quick look at what's been going on in the comment section. Just make a couple comments. I'm gonna go down real quick. She says, Brussels Sprout says it's very easy to hide when you aren't ready to tell anyone. Don't put it on yourself. Somber says, I don't have a single woman friend who hasn't experienced SA. B. Golden says, it happens to a lot of boys. Soul says, I noticed he felt like he had to have one, but didn't understand you have to participate. Lewis Samuel said, it's not black and white, and I'm not excusing. You have to remember they are men. I don't know what that conversation was about. It looks like they're going back and forth a little bit. Oh, I was about to say Onyx Frost says, yes, it has happened to a lot of boys, and 85% of the time, men are the perpetrators. Thank you for being in the comments too, my friend. I appreciate it. I don't have the ability to multitask like that. Kakina says, most women hide it. Most have experienced it more than one time and may hide or suppress it. And that's the thing, like, because we're in a culture of disbelief, right? And we don't and you made a point earlier about what believe all women means. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm gonna get a pitchfork and a torch and burn this person's house down. As soon as I hear about something happening, what it means is the process between incident and getting justice, right? Whatever that looks like, in our legal system, is humanized first of all, and that survivors that come forward are treated with dignity and respect, that their claims are treated seriously, you know what I mean, and that they're listened to, heard, and given a space to heal and or seek justice as they see fit, you know what I mean, so that the opposite of that being, as soon as someone comes forward, it's like, no, you made it up, you deserved it. What were you wearing? You get interrogated. What were you wearing? Where were you? What did you say to him? You know what I mean, all these other things, instead of just showing empathy. Because what I heard about your testimony was you had empathy for women, you know what I mean, and you were hurt as they were hurt. You know what I mean, it hurt you that they were hurt, and so you related to them in a human way. And if we can treat women with dignity and respect through that process, more women may come forward. And I was reading a stat where it was like saying that only 1 out of 15 Black women will come forward and say something when something happens to them, right? And it's like, wow. And out of that one person, out of that 15, most of the time it's not even going to get justice. You know what I mean? And it's going to be ostracized from their community. Because again, you're not talking about just these complete strangers. You're talking about upstanding members of the community. You're talking about important members of your family. You're talking about coworkers or maybe even administration that has power and influence over your job. So all of these things come into play when we talk about survivors coming forward. And for me, it's like, when you talk about believing women, it is creating a culture where survivors can be treated with dignity and respect through that entire process, and that starts with listening to women and giving them space to voice their grievances. And then as facts come out. You know what I mean? Let the legal system take its course in that case. But in the process, like, oh my gosh, it's women that on this app that when they come forward, now they're getting like threats on their lives. Now they're getting doxxed, you know what I mean, just because they're coming forward and trying to say, hey, this happened to me. This wasn't right.
But like think about the logic behind that though. Cause like I know exactly what you did, the scenario you're talking about. Think of the logic behind saying you're lying about this violent thing happening to you, so we're gonna set up some violent thing to happen to you.
Right.
Like it just, like I said, when I look at things, I it's so hard for me not to like think of so many people as dumb, and like my father said, don't do that, right? Because like you don't know how people, like, some stuff really just be dumb, right? Like really just be stupidity. Because like really think about the stuff y'all are saying and doing, and the effect and result that it would have, right? Like play that out in your mind. 5 years.
Right.
How is how we're acting now going to like in 5 years? Play it out, right? Like it's not better, right? Like it's not gonna be
Right.
good. So like yeah, I
And what's interesting is to take it even a step further. The men specifically that say this, right, are the same men that base their whole identity off of being providers and protectors, right? So you're a provider and a protector, but when someone comes forward and says, "Hey, something happened to me," I'm not even asking for your protection or you to provide anything. I just need you to listen. It's wait a minute. I don't listen. I don't do that. That's not my wood shop. You know what I mean? I only do this for the specific woman that I've identified that has tangible value to me that I can extract resources from, and then that person has my temporal protection, conditional protection,
which
conditional provision,
is
as
crazy.
long as they act right, and as long as they're still with me, and as long as they weren't wearing something crazy, or they took my opinion and they listened to me and they did exactly what I said, to do in that situation, then that person has my protection, and,
Fatal. Like the when you get a chance, there's two things that I actually want to have a whole nother discussion on, because you just said both of them, right? The first one, I'll actually go backwards. You just said they don't, or they listen to me, so I'm gonna protect them, right? They listen to me and they do exactly what I say, right? I was on a live where a woman said that the way that men define listening and the way women define listening are completely different, right? He was like, when men say listening, what they mean is that the woman isn't, although when they say women don't listen to me, they mean women aren't doing what I'm saying. They're not obeying me, is what they really mean.
right.
And when women say men aren't listening to me, they're saying they're not considering what I'm saying, what I'm talking about, my feelings on the matter and on the subject, right? And I was thinking like, damn, hold on. That's a very good observation. That's damn, right? It's like the second thing though is you said, um, oh my goodness, I had responded to a comment about it too. Protection, conditional protection, right? And that I've always, like, when men say I can't protect what I can't control, I need a level of control and authority to protect something. And I'm like, no, you don't. We protect things that we care about. We protect things that we love. Example, if your teenage son got himself into some trouble and like somebody was about to come pew pew him and unalive him, as a father, you would jump in the way and stop that bullet, even if it was your son's fault. And I don't know a father that wouldn't, right? Like
Right.
he disobeyed your orders, he disobeyed, you had no control over him, and you would still jump in front of that bullet for your son, because we protect what we care about. We protect what we love, not on the basis of whether or not we have control over it, right? So like those are two that I would really like to have a live
Oh
over.
yeah, we can definitely do a part two, part three, and whatnot. But I want to, just to add to that,
Yeah.
a lot of times what women are asking for and what the situation requires that does not require you to jump in front of a bullet.
It
Because I
does.
think sometimes our imagination as men, because we've been indoctrinated so much with like this hero worship and action hero, mythology. We want to be Schwarzenegger and Stallone and all of these things in these situations because that makes us feel like men. We think that every situation requires us to jump in front of the proverbial bullet when that's not even what's being asked for. First of all, you talk about control yourself, sir. Control yourself.
Exactly.
Learn how to control yourself and then teach other men to control themselves. That will create a safer environment than you finding bullets to jump in front of, right? Let people know that you're aware and you're watching, that you see what they're doing. You know what I mean? It doesn't require you to jump in front of a bullet or to antagonize someone to the point where there's a bullet to be jumped in front of because things escalate, right? Once something escalates to the height of the Empire State Building, then yes, now there's bullets to jump in front of. But a lot of times, if you intervene early, that's not the case, right? So it's being what's called an upstander and not a bystander, right? And if there's 25 upstanding people, that are watching this one person have this interaction with this one woman, that person is typically gonna back off. You know what I mean? And say, wait a minute, there's 25 witnesses of what's going on. I would actually not like to spend my life in prison. Let me go elsewhere. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But if everybody turns a blind eye in this kind of mob mentality, you know what I mean, where it's like, oh, it's that person's responsibility to do something. Oh, they're going to do something, not me. And I think there's a study that says that the larger the group is, the more likely that is to happen. Where it's like everybody thinks someone else is going to do something, then nobody cares. let me go ahead and do my thing. But that's the reason why, and I'll say specifically with when men were caught on camera saying, oh, why didn't you step in and do something and protect black women? They were like, what am I supposed to do? It wasn't what they said, right? It was all the other men, and I'm speaking about the roast situation. It's all the other men online that said, yeah, I'm not going to protect black women for what? I don't know that. That's what we're going back and forth about. Now it's not even about that situation anymore because you confirmed that you were going to not do anything if the actual situation took place. You know what I mean? So I don't. That's crazy to me.
Ain't it though?
But I wanted to circle back. So specifically, what does the phrase "believe women" mean to you, and how does a man put that phrase into action? Because I know we've talked about it throughout this conversation, but like, how does that actually get put into action?
So for me, it's to simply like I look at it. If this may even sound weird, but I look at it from like a scientific approach, right? You just told me something, right? My purpose now is to do the due diligence. All right, let me find out like what's going on, why it's going on, so how I can stop it because it's bad, it's negative, right? You just told me you were SA. All right, cool. Let me find out how prevalent this is, how I can stop it. How, right, I'm believing you because like one, it doesn't hurt to believe you because it's not like that doesn't happen. It's not like SA is this mythical thing that does not happen, right? So the plausibility of it having happened to them is right. It's very straightforward. Two, I look at, all right, like if I don't believe this person, right, and they were telling the truth, and like statistically speaking, we know women are telling the truth, like what is it, 98, 99% of the time.
Right,
So like statistically, she's probably telling the truth. There's no reason for her to fib about this because like the man she's accusing isn't famous. They're not some powerful politician. They're not, you know what I'm saying, some basketball. They're a nigga on the corner over there, right? They live, you know what I'm saying, down the
right,
street. Like, and so my mind is like, there's no reason for her to lie, right? There's no current reason for her to lie, right? And then, people will try and bring up, oh, well, what if, he did something, hurt her feelings, cheated on her, that I'm like, that'll all come out. But like, I am not going to consider, this being her being cheated on, so her being mad over the potential that the violence that could have happened to her happened or did not, right? Like, I'm not going to
right.
believe that over the other. That doesn't make any sense because I look at the level of consequence, right? Which one has more consequence? The grape does. That's the one I'm gonna. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, I try to look at it very practically because like very even like from a practical standpoint, there's no reason not to believe her. And then obviously emotionally, somebody comes to you and tells you that like this is something very, very traumatic for them, right? And like again, I doubt like most people, and again, statistically, most women aren't, most people are gonna make something up like that for what, right? There's no logic behind the for what. So I just to me it's very straightforward. Believe women is when they come to you with something, consider the possibility as plausible and
right,
like move forward with that. Like it's very simple. It's not you're not condemning anybody. You're this could have happened to my friend. This could have happened to my relative. This could have happened to this woman. All right, what steps can I take to one, ensure it doesn't happen because it's bad, and two, to ensure that she gets justice if this indeed did happen, and again statistically, right, that needs to take place. That's what it means to me and how you can apply it.
no, absolutely. If I was a gambling man, and I'm not, but let's say if I walked into any casino and I knew that on this particular roulette table, right, this roulette wheel, if I bet on black 9 times out of 10, it was going to hit black, I would live at that roulette table. I would bet on black every time because 9 out of 10 times it's going to hit black. And then if it hits red, I don't lose anything. Like I don't lose any money. I just get to, it just continues to go on until this wheel stops. You know what I mean? Then Why, there's absolutely no reason to not to. And that's the exact situation when we talk about grape culture. We know nine out of 10 times women are telling the truth. And then if you believe someone and it doesn't, and it turns out that maybe they made it up for whatever reason, right? In that 2 to 10% category, what do you as an individual lose? You gave them the benefit of the doubt, and you supported them, and you showed them compassion, you showed them empathy, like a hope you would show any other human being who had something bad happen to them.
You know what
But
I'll
the
say?
problem is,
Hmm?
because we see ourselves in the potential abuser, we see ourselves as that person because we've been conditioned to be predatorial in the way we approach women. We see ourselves and are proud of being hunters. Proud of being persuasive and conniving and coercive. You know what I mean, in our approach to women. Then we don't want to incriminate ourselves. So we're going to insulate this person and say, oh, well, what if? What if that person was actually an alien and they were only pretending to be a great victim? You know what I mean? And that person could, all these what if scenarios or what aboutisms that we would shoot, we would like, slash immediately through if we were talking about any other topic, right? We was, wait a minute, doesn't have anything to do with this topic. But because it's this topic, we're like, oh no, people are innocent until proven guilty. I'm not gonna, I can't say anything until then.
I think it goes back to like what I said earlier about they are in one of them three groups, right? They're one
Right,
of those people that either did it themselves, have friends that do it or did it, or one of those people that's like, I'm not, I don't do that, so don't say it's me. But it's like, no, statistically it is. I think the problem is that they think if they believe women, then they have to immediately condemn that man. And it's like, no, you can believe her, offer emotional space for her to feel safe, to feel supported, to feel like cared for by her community and society without condemning him until he's proven guilty, right? Like
right.
it's not like a
It's not a
one
binary.
creates the necessity of the other, right? You can have again self-control, right? When you hear a woman accuse a man, what I do is, all right, she needs the attention now, right? So that's where I set my attention. I don't care about him because he's one, either innocent potentially, like very, very small chance, but potentially, or he's guilty. There's no reason for me to care about him right now. She has the attention. And then as soon as he's proven guilty, and again, even if, like, even when you look at situations, like we said, conviction rates 2 to 3% in this country, but like you can look at cases and know what happened, right? Even when I'm looking at that man, it's like he's guilty, and like 97% of the time that man is guilty. Like I don't have to say anything about him until she's already been believed, taken care of, emotionally supported, validated, and then we focus, right? I don't have to go and condemn this man and oh he da da da, like that's not important to me. She is, right? And I think so many people think that's how we have to treat it. If this is what happened, we gotta immediately know. It's like that's why we have a justice system. Yes, it could be better, and it absolutely needs to be better. Like that's why we have that, right? Like
Right.
we're not primitive and barbaric and need to. Oh, we need to be like no. Let justice be served, but like take care of her first. And people don't think that way. And like you said, I think it goes back to they see themselves more in the rapist than they do in the potential victim, or even just as an outside party, like a third party seeing something happen.
Another thing that you talked about, the cheating aspect of it, right? And it made me think about the difference between legal consent and ethical consent, right? Because I think a lot of times we try to get as close to that line, of legality, and not cross it, because it's not that we actually care about and respect women. We just don't want to go to jail and don't want the condemnation that goes along with being on a list. You know what I mean? But when we talk about like cheating, right, and how this goes into like coercion is like, would this person, would this woman open herself up to you and give you her body, right? If she knew da 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 da, right? So if she knew that you were actually cheating on her, right? Would she actually still give her consent, right? Does she have full informed consent? If she knew that you had an STI, would she give her consent and choose to sleep with you, right? If she knew that you actually were not going to marry her and you actually did not have intentions on spending the rest of your life with her, would she still, be open to that act with you? And so those type of things, maybe they're not necessarily. I don't know. Maybe the STI is illegal, but in some cases I think it is. But
It
in
is.
many cases, it's not illegal, right? But you're still taking that person's ability to give informed consent away from them in a way, right? And it's like when we get into when we move the conversation beyond just legal consent and move it to ethical consent. And then we look back at the Jonathan Majors situation where the reason that whole incident happened is because, he got a text from another woman and she's grabbing his phone because it's like, wait a minute, now I feel violated because you're dealing with me, but you're dealing with somebody else that I don't know about. Then that's how that situation all comes. Now I understand, like, hey, he lost millions and millions of dollars? That's for the courts to decide, and they actually did. That's for Disney to decide, they actually did. But I find it interesting that part of the conversation is not talked about when it comes into like, yo, stop playing with women's hearts. Like, you are Jonathan Majors. Like, if you wanted to, you could probably have multiple women if you really wanted to, and they all know about each other and be cool with it because you're Jonathan Majors, right? But I think, and part of it is like the again, going into the game, going into the sport of it. It's like, can I get away with it, right? And again, I don't know him one way or the other, but I look at the situation and how that situation plays out in many other people's lives, where it's like, no, it wasn't a violation of legal consent, but it was definitely a violation of ethical consent. Would you still have, laid down with this man if you knew that he poked a hole in the prophylactic, you know what I mean? And you could, get pregnant and whatnot. All these things are how we're rolling the dice with other people's lives. And it's like, why not just be honest and be forthright? If you're the persuasive man that you say you are, you're the game field man that you say you are, then why not speak the truth and let that be what it is and let people make their decision on something that's going to affect the rest of their lives? You know what I mean? But that ethical consent thing, I don't think we talk about it enough because we're so bogged down in arguing about trying to get people to understand legal consent and what can get you put in jail. We don't talk about the ethical consent and what's just wrong. You know what I mean? And what does damage to people's lives.
And a phrase that I hear so often in relation to that it always drives me up a wall when I hear it is when like men will say women can't handle the truth. That's why we're not honest with our intentions. And it's like, what do you mean by that? Because like, do you mean their response to that being no is them not handling the truth? Because like they have a right to say no if like you're like, I just want to do this. Oh, okay, cool. I'm not cool with that. Right? Is that what you mean by they can't handle it? Or do you mean they get offended because like you're looking at them like a piece of meat, which like they do have every right to be offended if that's how you're coming at them. Right? Now, the response that they give being I'm offended at that, right? That's not them not handling the truth. It's them not liking that that's how you see them, right? So like
Right.
what do you mean they can't handle the truth? Like I hate the misinterpretation of that, or like the trying to interpret that and spin a narrative of like they can't handle. Like, no, you just don't like their response to your honesty, which is also honest on their part, right? Because like there are women who, if you're honest, they are very open. They're like, yeah, cool, let's do it, right? I'm down. That's all that's all I'm looking for. And there are women who are like, no, that's not what I'm looking for, and you respect both. Like it's simple.
Well, again, this goes into patriarchy, right? The conversation between, well, it's really the Madonna whore complex, right? It's the modern version of the Madonna whore complex, where on the one hand we denigrate what we label as 304s, right? 304s are basically women who want to have relations with you, right? We denigrate them. They're not of value. We don't want 304s. We dislike 304s. They're dehumanized. They're in the dehumanized corner. And the women that don't want to have relations with us, we put on a pedestal the traditional woman and say, oh yeah, you all are so great for being traditional. I love a traditional woman. But so because we don't want the 304s, the women that want us, we want the traditional women, the women who don't want us, they just want to wait for marriage. We're going to now lie to these women and convince them that we want to marry them so that we can have what other men haven't had, and then still wind up not, oh, it doesn't work out, you know what I mean, or whatnot, for whatever reason. And the whole body count conversation, again, this is all great culture. If you all think that we're off track, we're actually not. We're right in the center of it. This is all great culture. The idea that women have a fair market value, right? That similar to a house or a car, that every time they put mileage on the car or have relations with a man that's not us, they're devalued. They lose value anytime they have relations with any other man other than us. But we want to have relations, and we're still not married. So anytime that we have relations with another woman, we are also devaluing that woman for other men who might marry them. That whole paradox it puts women in a no-win Kobayashi Maru catch-22 situation where they're going to be castigated if they're traditional women and stuck up and think they're too good and actually want men that make money, and they're going to be castigated if they're 304s who actually want to have casual relations and enjoy it because it's pleasure, and why not? Because that's what's in your it's a very, very interesting situation to be in. And you'll see men begin to unravel when you ask them to kind of explain that, right? Because either they're going to have to deny their former selves and say they're now this holy man that only deals with traditional women, or they're going to have to admit that, you know what, I just don't like women. I want something from 304s, but I actually don't like them. And I don't, afterwards, I don't want to deal with them. It's a weird pathology. It's a
I
very strange pathology to have.
My conclusion on like it for how that even makes sense is that I think men just have this, no, not like, and not obviously not all, but no, actually, because like the way that patriarchy sets us up to look at and treat and value and interact with women, I do believe that there's like archetypes of women in men's minds, that there are certain women who are only meant to be used for X, Y, and Z, right? So like for example, like I said before, I've always had a lot of female friends, right? Because like one, I grew up with my mother and my grandmother, right? But like I just able to talk with people very easily, and they've always trusted me, right? I have female friends who are like have a very specific body type. Like they'll be tall and thin, right? And they won't get attention or didn't get attention when we were younger, but like now we're older, they get a lot of attention, right? Or like my female friends who were thicker, right? And like the shapely thicker, who would like get attention from so many people, but always be done dirty, always be cheated on, always be dogged. And I'm like, but men say they like this, type of body style, but like you get
Right.
this way. That's kind of weird, right? And like, so it to me, it was like, I think a lot of men have these like ideas of there's a specific type of woman for a specific type of role. You'll even see certain men say, well, I can't take a woman that looks like that home to my mother. I can't take her into like like high end places because she has a very, what's the word?
Urban look.
Right, urban look, or a very, like just a very raunchy look or whatever. Like her body itself is raunchy. It's like, no, that's just what she looks like, right? And so I think there is that idea. I think there's the idea in some men's heads that if they have a woman that looks like that or looks a certain way and other men want her, he'll have to compete more with a certain look versus another one, right? Like, so we put women in all these little different categories and then treat them accordingly, even if within that category they're a very good person, right? Or they're a very whatever, I think because we do that and because society has taught us and conditioned us to look at women that way, right? And it's almost as if like when you said like a market value, it's like when men go out to try and get women, there's like a point system to it, damn near, right? Like a certain women are a greater reaction from your boys when I got that, I hit that, I whatever. You get a greater reaction than another woman, right? And like it becomes a game that like people have to win and have to play. And like then when they feel like, all right, I've maxed out, I can settle down now. It don't matter what kind of look like she got as long as she's a good
Right.
person now, right? Because I've had all the good looks. And I think that goes in further into like bringing it like, and I want to circle it back because I do feel like right, that goes back in even to grape culture, because then you'll have women that we spoke about before who like are alone, who don't have a lot of people around, who don't have family, who aren't gonna be missed, who aren't going to be. That's the woman that if I did this to, like nobody will care, right? Oh, I'll get her drunk. I just need to get my rocks off. And so I think the categorization that we do, that we learn at a very early age, like you even see it in movies, like think about it. You even see it in movies. You have stereotypes and archetypes of what women are. And like, so you got the ditzy, really attractive girl who gets used by the jocks and and she's always with them, right? You got like, you have so many different versions, and like we put women in these categories in real life and then treat them based on how we've been conditioned to do so.
No, absolutely. Going back to the great culture pyramid, which is it's a great illustration for anybody who maybe they've never heard the word before and just aren't familiar. It kind of just, in one picture, kind of encapsulates it. You have normalization kind of at the base of the pyramid. And these are your racy, great jokes, your sexist attitudes, your locker room talk, which doesn't have to happen in a locker room, by the way. Then you get into degradation, you know what I mean, where it's more so the dehumanization, where it's the stalking, and it's the kind of revenge porn and all of these different things where it's like, now I'm picking at you. I haven't put my hands on you yet, but I'm doing this to you because for whatever reason I feel like you should be giving me something that I'm not receiving, and so I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to humiliate you, right? And then you get into the actual assault at the top, which doesn't have to be limited to just rape. Sometimes it's outright unaliving. But it's the I'm trying to use TikTok language, the molestation. You know what I mean? All of those things that take place that are actual traumatic events that happen that are life changing. All of those things. But the people at the base of the pyramid, the people that kind of keep those attitudes, insulate the people at the top. So even if you're not a person that actually perpetuated, and maybe you go through your whole life and you've never done anything close to that, but if you're possessing these attitudes, you make it safe for all these other men to operate among you. You know what I mean? And it's amazing. And several of my mutual women creators have said that it's amazing how every woman that knows another woman has been SA'd, but every man that knows another man has no idea and has never met a rapist or someone who's committed SA or anything of that nature. So where are these men? That
Right.
do you? It's just you haven't had those conversations, and part of that is on the male side of things. We have a lot of friendships, and I'm speaking for myself as well, where they're very surface. I mean, we don't emotionally confide in each other as a rule of thumb. You know what I mean? We don't talk about what's going on in our personal lives. You have men that you play basketball with, that you play video games with, and then they go and do some other stuff you have no idea about because y'all are not in each other's lives like that. It's very strict boundaries, you know what I mean, on that. But especially as but that's also how you get caught up because you're in a car with somebody and you're driving, you don't know what this person is doing. So that person gets pulled over, and now you're accomplice to something because you didn't do your due diligence on who you're actually dealing with, or you're so okay with that because again, it's so normalized. You know what I mean? You feel like everybody's doing that same thing, so it hurts men as well. But I wanted to, and I want this is an important question. I don't want to skip over it. Like, what would you say to men who are concerned about false allegations? Because that always comes up.
It always does. And again, I would point them in the direction of the facts. Right? Like
Right.
the very simple false allegations account for like less than 2% of cases. I think 2 to 10%, right? But like it's much closer to 2%.
Right.
The reason so many people think that false allegations are so high is, like I said earlier, twofold. You have the false allegations that hit the media, right? Because somebody was just trying to get money. And it only happening to famous people though, right? Like it's not happening to Joe Schmo down the street, right? Like because nobody
Right.
knows Joe Schmo down the street. And then it's also because the conviction rate in our country is so low. People assume that means, oh, it's because those men didn't do it. And it's like, no, that's not, because even when they do get convicted, they still don't get time. It's because our country doesn't take it seriously, right? Because in countries where they take it seriously, the incidence of grape is lower, like much lower. And again, the top countries are the Middle East, like 6 countries in the Middle East: Saudi Arabia, Iran,
Right.
Iraq, Afghanistan, right? Syria, like lowest incidence of grape, and China, right? Like, because they got it figured out. If you punish people for this, it seems to stop, right?
Yeah.
Like, simple.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. It's not to say that those cultures are perfect or that they don't practice um, patriarchal policies that are harmful to women. But it is to say that they found that it's in their best interest not to allow moralist behavior to take place. You know what I mean? In that way. And I think sometimes also it gets into population control. You know what I mean? As far as like, yo, if we got we got a population of more people, we don't want to have unwanted, unsanctioned, relations and whatnot. So a lot of times we still this also gets into bodily autonomy and pro life, pro choice discussions because if you feel like controlling a woman's body is controlling the means of production, that could be both on the extreme side of extreme chastity, where what I mean, relations have to be sanctioned and government approved almost, to Wild Wild West. You know what I mean? Anything goes. You just grab somebody by the whatchamacallit, Trumpisms and whatnot. So, and both of those situations are oppressive and harmful to women because it takes the decision making process out of their control. But yeah, with false allegations, what I would say to men, and you said it, what I mean, like really, like let the facts lead you. Okay,
Exactly.
but what I mean, really, like, if you know the facts before this incident happens, right? If you've done that due diligence, because people say, well, I'm waiting for the facts to come out. That's what they say. You know what I mean? I'm just going to wait. I'm not going to show this person empathy. Like we're going to ostracize them until the facts come out. But a lot of the facts have already come out. We know statistically what percentage of women are saying the truth historically and what, are, maybe fabrications or whatnot. So you should let that guide your behavior. But what I would say in addition to that is think about if that was someone that you knew.
Mhm.
Like if that was your mother, because we know 1 out of 3, what I mean, is going to happen in their lifetime. So when that happens to someone that how would you want other men to treat that person? How would you want other women to treat that person? Because it's not just men that will victim blame, which is also on the great culture pyramid. Victim blaming is actually a big part of it because that culture of denial helps to insulate, potential abusers. But how would you want the person that you care about to be treated? Treat that other person like that. And then it goes back to the golden rule, which is supposed to be a Judeo-Christian principle. But how often is it practiced when we're not dealing with someone that's in our little cult? You know, um,
You said it. You hit the nail on the head, bro. You said it. Because if you see like a potential victim, because we'll see potential victims in ourselves when we see another black man like pew by the police
right,
officers, right? It's like, so why can't you see another potential victim like your the women you care about and the woman that you're seeing that's saying this happened to me, right? It's so simple. And kindness is free. It does not cost you anything to say, okay, you know what? She has gone through a traumatic experience, potentially, or whatever. Let me offer some empathy. Again, I don't have to condemn the man. I can just offer her empathy, right? I see you, sis.
right.
That sounds terrible. I'm sorry you went through that. It's simple, right? But like, yeah.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting because we identify and love blackness, right? But it's only a myopic, very narrow view of blackness. It's a blackness that has been tainted. The idea of blackness, I'm talking about conceptually, that has been tainted. I think Obsidian said this by white supremacy, because you really only are hetero if you're financially successful, right? If you're pro nuclear family, if you fit all these other categories that are kind of conservative when you think about it, um, then you can be black. But if you're LGBTQ, if you're trans, what I mean, if you're homeless, if you're poor, then no, you're actually not as black as you thought you were. If you're a woman, we're not really concerned about those black people. We're concerned about, again, the black people that fit into our little cult, in our little idyllic utopian society that we've actually developed in our head because of the trauma that we've experienced, and it helps us, function through escapism. Instead of saying, hey, if you're black, I'm pro everybody black, as long as you're not doing something that's hurting somebody else. You know what I mean? As long as you're not doing something but we, um, we will twist normal human behavior. We'll twist people just being people as, oh, you're harming the black community. If you're a black man, and I like I said, if you're a black man and you're not married to a black woman, anything outside of that, you're hurting the black community. And it's like, really, am I? Like, For real? And I know there's a whole another that's a whole nother live or whatnot, a conversation. But going strictly to the grape culture side of it, we want to be seen as human as black men, but we'll all at the same time dehumanize black women. Um, I want to, and we've actually covered a lot of this, but I guess we can circle back to it. If you have any other thoughts you'd like to say about informed consent, like how would you? Actually, this is a good question. How would you explain consent to a young man who's about to become active?
So, like, this conversation is one that like I do actually have and like plan on having more of because I have like nephews coming up in that age. But it's essentially you don't want to have relations in that way with anyone that is not enthusiastic about being in that bedroom with you, right? Because like to me personally, right, I don't want to get in the bedroom and waste my time or feel like I wasted my time or you wasted my time, right? Like I want enthusiasm. I want you to be just as ready to jump me as I am to jump you. So like if that's not what we have when we about to walk in, then that doesn't need to happen as far as I'm concerned, right?
Right,
And so with my nephew and like the young men I tell, it's always like one, always ask, but like think of it this way. If you have to ask, it's probably a no, but like ask because the consent piece, right? The mental process I'm going through is more like if you think you have to ask, it's because she's probably not showing a lot of the signs that this is enthusiastic, right? Like
right,
ask because consent, right? But like if you think you have to, it's probably no. Ask so that she can say it outright, right? And like just take that on the chin. But like that's the kind of mentality you should have, right? It should be like she should be so, so into me. I should be like, you should be asking me if you could touch me, right? Like that's
right,
what you feel me. So like I want them to think of it like and then also, if that doesn't make sense, it's more like think about your sister, right? If your sister was in a situation with a man like you doing what you're doing to this young girl, would you be okay with that? And outside of the I don't want no man, no, 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 no. Your sister is a woman, she's going to do it eventually. Consider a realistic possibility. If your sister was in a room with a man like you doing what you're doing now to this young woman, would you be okay with that? Right? And if they're like, damn, nah, not at all. Like, then you not doing right, right? You don't really have consent from this woman, right? You wouldn't want your sister drunk in a room with some man, would you? Nah, I wouldn't. Why are you in this room with this drunk woman? Right? You wouldn't want your sister in a room with a man who was telling her, "Oh, if you loved me, you would do this." So why are you in this room telling this woman, "If you loved me, you would do this"? Right?
right.
Like to me, it's a very mirror situation. Look at everything as a mirror. If you would not want this for the people in your life that you care about, why would you be doing it to this other person who has a people with lives, other people in their lives that care about them? You know. But like, and like someone asked a good question. Why do you have to think of your sister or mom? For some men, they're never going to see other women because they've been conditioned to not see women as people, but they're never going to see other women as people. The only way to see, like even their sisters and mothers and the women in their family, they don't see as people. They see as sisters and mothers and whatever their role is in their family, right? And like that's just the way to reach that person. I wish I could tell, like, man, yo, look at this woman as a person. I know she's not important to you. I know you don't care about her, but like consider somebody else does. Consider that like she's a human being. Like men will be like, I don't care about the nigga on the street and he black, right? Like it's those are
Right.
the kind of people you talking to. And so it's like if you can try to mirror the situation and see that that woman is important because like the same way the women that you think are important to you, right? And like that's the only reason they're important because of their relation to you. Consider that there's another black man, if you say you care so much about black men, like you on the other side that is related to that woman who cares about her and wants to see her make it home, right?
No, that's well said. That's well said. I would I think that the reason why some men are able to dehumanize women is because they've been dehumanized themselves, right? So I want I want our boys to realize that they're valuable. You know what I mean? And that's a hard sometimes that's a hard lesson to learn when everything around you is telling you that you're not valuable, right? And this goes into gender roles a little bit, and I won't go down that rabbit hole But to say that the way that we raise our boys and the way we raise our girls can be very different, right? In my neighborhood, at a certain age, a lot of the girls were like just kept in the house. You know what I mean? But the boys is like, go out, just do what you do, be boys, and be playing the dirt. You know what I mean? Just come home when the lights come on. You know what I mean? So it's the supervision, all of those things, the parenting styles is different. And maybe, we can get into the argument of whether it should be or not. But what I will say is a lot of times boys wind up not feeling like they have inherent value. And this goes into the Will to Change project in general. Like one of the things that Bell Hooks said in her book that really stuck with me, and made that book like one of those cornerstone books and life changing books for me was that, men, the inherent value of maleness, right? Because men are told that the only way you have value in this world is the value that you acquire. Like you go out, you work, you go out, you go out, you hunt, you acquire, and that is what gives you value. If you don't work, you don't eat, which is valid. You should be working, but not to justify your humanity, right? Not to prove to yourself that you're somebody of worth, right? You do it for other reasons because it needs to be done. But a lot of times we've been programmed to only see ourselves as valuable by what we do, including the sexual conquest part. Because I've done this many things with this many women, that gives me value, that gives me self-worth, that gives me because I have charisma, I'm persuasive. You know what I mean? And these women think I'm valuable, so that makes me valuable. So my first thing would be you're valuable by yourself. With or without a woman, with or without, a car or any of those things, your humanity is worth something. And if no one else, it needs to be worth something to you. And because it's valuable, who you share your body with does matter. You know what I mean? Whether it's with 100 people or 50 people or 10 people, all of those things, are a matter of subjectivity. But value yourself. You know what I mean? Go into those situations bringing value, not to devalue. And then learn to respect because you're valuable and your no matters, right? Acts that you don't want shouldn't take place. Then you should respect other people's no as well. And you want, because you're valuable, you want to only be with people that enthusiastically want to be with you, that see that value and want to enjoy that value with you. And so in that case, you're two valuable people coming together and creating more value, not two damaged people coming together and taking things from each other, right? Or trying to extract resources from each other. And I don't know, maybe that's not the way to say it to a boy, but that's the message I want to get across. One, that you're valuable. Two, that you want someone of value to be with, that values you. And because of those things, those boundaries of humanity need to be respected. Because when you violate someone else's humanity, you also violate your own. You know what I mean? You also violate your own.
No, and someone brought up a good point that I do want to add to addendum to what I said. Oftentimes, even as I spoke earlier, men and women's families will hurt them, right? So, like, even if you speak about like that man's sister, he may not care about her the way he should, right?
Right.
So,
Mm.
like that instance, you know what? That's a very, very good point. And like that goes back to, I think, the way our entire system is designed. Like it goes back to the grape culture of we were taught that women have roles in our lives, and if they're like not doing those roles well, if they're not, then they're valueless. And even if like they are doing those roles, if I don't consider that they're important to me, because like you have some like siblings that just don't, you feel me? Like then I don't care, right? So like even the women in men's families don't be safe. So honestly, like trying to tell people who genuinely just don't care, right? Who genuinely look at it like I have the right to do this. I'm a man because like I'm stronger. I can dominate them. So no matter what, like I will always be on top. And it's like those people, we have jail for them. Like I don't see really a way around. Like there's jail for those because those are the type of people who will harm, who will do violence, and like you can't stop them. I don't want to say put them down, like even though in older times that's what we would have done, right? Like
Right.
because they're dangerous to the community, they're dangerous to the village essentially. So on like they may need to be right, but I do think for other people who don't necessarily have that extreme of a viewpoint, saying, like, you care about your sister, right? Well, like, some other man cares about his, right? And then for another level of man, it's like, bro, like, you don't want that to happen to you, right? Because, like, that would be bad for you, right? Why is it okay it happening to her, right? And like seeing her the same way you see yourself, because like you see yourself as human, you see yourself, or at least caring about someone that's not yourself. And I do think a lot of men have a problem caring about people outside themselves. And they'll say that, no, I pay the bills, I do my due. It's like, no, you're doing what you think you're supposed to do. That's not caring about people, right? You were told as a man you pay bills, so you're doing that. You're just fulfilling a task, fulfilling a duty, right? That's not the same thing as caring about somebody. It's like when men say, I
Right.
take care of my kids, but like they're only sending child support, right? It's like, but you see your kids once a month. Yeah, but I send the money every week though. Like, so I do want to correct that. I don't even think for some men that saying their sister or their mother or their aunt like matters to them, right? But I do think there are men who are showing that connection could help them see it, and then other men who it's like, no, they're further enough along to be like, do you want that to happen to you? So thank you for bringing that up.
No, absolutely. Quick commercial. The way these lives work, they're a little bit different than normal TikTok lives. They're one-on-one conversations. I see some of my mutuals, requesting to come up. We could definitely set up a one-on-one conversation, separately as well. And Onyx, if you're open to it, once we get through the formal part of the program, if you're okay with one person coming up one at a time and asking questions and having conversations, I don't know what your time is like. I'm definitely open to doing that. But in general, we won't have people up until this conversation is concluded, because we want to just have substance. You know what I mean? And not to say that 3 and 4 people don't have them, but even if we all agree, sometimes it feels like we're vying for vocal time, and sometimes talking over each other. And I wanted to X all that out and really just get to just genuine conversations. You know what I mean? I think in a way TikTok has lost the art of conversation, and just being able to just share conversation and even have a comfortable silence where neither people are thinking of what to say next. They're just having a conversation, listening to each other, responding, and things of that nature. But
Because like
I think you called it out, like when you talked about that mother, the role of mother and the role of sister is really what's respected, not necessarily the person. It's the way a lot of us men have been conditioned. In a sense, you are protecting the aspect of that person that is a possession in your life. That's your mother. That's your sister. And who's going to do something to something that's yours, right? But we're not, or at least some men. I'm not going to say all men, but a lot of times men don't come to the appraisal that their mother's actually a human being. Your mother's been taking care of you your whole life. She cooks, she cleans, according to in stereotypical world. She
not
does all these things around the house. But go ahead.
I just because I that specific phrase, your mother's human being, right? I can tell you the day, not the specific date, but like I can tell you the day that I like it dawned on me, my mother's a human being, right? This is out of college. I'm back, I had like went back home for a couple of like months, right, for me and my mom, so I can get myself on my feet. She had to go to the hospital get surgery for uh it's something like a lot of women get on their uterus, the not fibroids, it's something that I
Talk about
don't want to.
cis.
Yeah, like cis, but they weren't cancerous, right? Like she had to get them
Okay.
removed, right? And so like she had to go through surgery, right? And like I just remember thinking to myself, oh, surgery, people go through surgery all the time, she'll be fine, the doctors know what they're doing. And like I remember when like she got out the surgery room and she was like in the where we could go visit her, sorry. And we went to go visit her, and like I just remember seeing my mom in that hospital bed, and like you feel me, and like it hit me. I'm like, my mother's human. Like she's not gonna be here at some point, right? Like it smacked me in the face, bro. Like I went in the bathroom and like started like it really like hit me. Like I'm crying in the bathroom, like, bro, my mom really not gonna be here forever, right? So
Yeah.
like it like and that really made me understand that like damn, this whole time I've seen my mother as like this like entity, not even person, right? Like she's mother, right? Like I came from her, you know
Right.
what I mean? Like she's damn near God, right? Like you know what I'm saying? And like then I see her in this hospital bed and it's like, no, she's like me. right? Like she's exactly like me. She bleeds, she all of that. It like it's even how some men don't want to see, like even to the specific reference of mother as a role. There's a lot of men who like do not want to hear about, or know that they mother does, sexual things. Cause like I don't want to know. I don't want to. It's like your mother's human. She does, right?
Right.
Mama gotta have a life too, right? Like a lot of men don't want to, because mother is a role. That's not mother. Mother isn't a sexual being, right? And so, if the people within those roles in their family aren't doing those roles perfectly, I think a lot of men develop a level of, or a lack of rather, respect for the, people in the roles, and people in general, or the people in general, the women in general, because they're like, my mother who was supposed to be this was actually this, right? So like women are yada 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 yada. And like a lot of women will bring up like the mother issues, right? A lot of men have a mother wound. So I do think that like for a lot of men, like seeing the women in their lives as not just the role that they have in their life, sister, mother, grandmother, auntie, cousin, girlfriend, wife, whatever, and seeing them as human beings who happen to be doing that, or just that's one of the things that they do. I think that's a journey that a lot of men have to make, right?
No, absolutely. No, I didn't. It was, of course, a progression, right? But the biggest breakthrough I had in therapy was when I realized all the unspoken contracts I made with other people and that they weren't a part of, especially my mother. You know what I mean? Because in my mind, the whole purpose for me leaving home and going to college and becoming financially successful was so that I could rescue my mother, right? And when I did those things, you know what I mean, and I got back and realized that she didn't need to be rescued, didn't want to be rescued because that was her life. It was like, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? You know what I mean? And I think that was a mother wound that I didn't know was there until I realized that. You know what I mean? That these were unspoken promises that I made to myself about other people because I wanted them to live a certain way. And I didn't really respect their choices and who they decided to be. And I think there's a very vaguely written expectation that at some point once a woman or maybe even a father becomes a parent, that it's their responsibility to live vicariously through their children. You know what I mean? And there is a lot of sacrifice and responsibility that goes on to it. But at no point should they have to sacrifice their entire being to be a parent, especially once you're grown. Like once you're grown, they get to go on and live their life. And it's crazy to me how, and again, this goes into the humanization of women, which goes into grape culture, right? Because if you can't even come to the point where you see your mother as human, how can you ever hope to see your wife as human, your daughter is human, your coworker is human, the woman down the street is human? Because the person that gave you life, you still see as a utility and a resource to extract energy from, and so it's a very transactional relationship. When you start to value your mother as someone who has their own autonomy, has their own purpose and destiny in life, above and beyond just raising you, because again, that goes into gender roles where women's role in life is to raise children. That's their purpose. That is a sexist attitude, and that leads to dehumanization. So when you can see your mother, her divine purpose was not just to raise you. She has other dreams and aspirations that she's probably buried under not even feet, miles of debris and dirt and years in order to raise you in the way she thought she needed to. But those things should be unearthed. You know what I mean? Because that allows them to reach their Maslow's hierarchy of needs and get to self actualization, just like any other human being deserves, right? But because we don't respect our mother, our birth mother, we don't respect Mother Earth. We don't respect the sisterhood that are also our mothers. So all those things are connected, you know what I mean? And I think patriarchy breaks down the interconnectedness of things and says that everything is in its own individual, isolated category, you know what I mean, for scientific observation. And that comes from westernized patriarchy. You know what I mean? It again goes full circle. Um, so going to a part B, and again, we got one more question a question and a half. But I don't. Each one of these are so important. I don't want to. I don't want to skip
No,
anything, man.
I loved all the questions. That's what I said. Don't skip any of them. I loved
I,
all of them.
I appreciate you. How does coercion and other forms of manipulation affect a person's ability to give informed consent?
Oh, that was one of the ones I wanted to get to because, and it kind of goes back to like what we spoke on earlier. Like if you have to lie to a woman because you think she can't handle the truth of your honesty that you just want to have sex, so and you know she's gonna say no because she either wants to wait till marriage or she's celibate or whatever, but she just don't want to have sex with you, right? Or have relations with you, right? Like then you lie to her. You have taken away her right to choose no, right? You tell her exactly what she wants to hear. And that's why, like, even a lot of time you'll see the behavior even on these lives, right? Like, think about it, Fatal. When you've been on a live and you've spoken up for something women go through, and what do men say? She not gonna F you, bro. She not gonna, it's like, bro, you realize that you're showing the behavior right there. Like, you're showing the behavior women are talking about. You were stating right there that men are only saying kind things or what women want to hear to get something out of them because that's what you do. It's projection, right? And so like when you lie and you manipulate someone knowing and learning what they want and just supplying that until they give you what you want, like that's not one consent. So like ethically it's wrong. And like men know that. They know that it's wrong, right? But they can't handle the truth. So to me, I don't. It's very predatory. Like you said, men are hunters. They feel like they have to and have been told to conquer and like conquer in whatever way you need to conquer.
No, absolutely. Um, okay, going to question 6. How would you say a woman's right to choose with regards to pregnancy is related to grape culture, or why is it not related? And how does objectification and normalization eventually lead to degradation and assault?
Say that one more time.
Sure, I'm sorry, I'll split it up. How would you say a woman's right to choose with regards to pregnancy is related to grape culture, or why is it not related? Because I don't want to assume one way or the other, but we're talking about a woman's right to choose her, as far as whether to be pregnant or not in
Yeah.
grape culture.
No, that was the question that got me thinking the most, right? Because like that was the one that was the most interesting to me. I thought in one direction of is it connected to like the idea of conquest, and like with men you would imagine if the idea is to conquer and that is to have relations with the woman, and then like a higher form, I guess, like if you were to categorize it, would be, well, I got her pregnant so now she's mine, right? Because like now for 18 years or whatever, the child is ours, she has to be in contact with me, like trapping someone basically, right? So like if I feel as though women belong to men, right? Because I've been conditioned to see them as property of men, as in servitude and helpmates to men, and I want this woman because she's beautiful. I get her pregnant so that she always has to be around me, right? So that she always has to deal with me because the child is ours, right? And if she chooses to not carry my seed, one, she's denied me the conquest, right? Or that level of conquest. And two, she has denied me the future access to her, right? And so you are looking at it from a realm of possession, right? And like grape culture is about men's idea of entitlement towards women, right? And I deserve to have women because I'm a man, like you said, I built society, etc. So I think it's connected in one way because of that, right? That like if she has my seed, she's mine, right?
Right.
If she has my seed, she has to be, and I have access to her forever, right? But then like in the other direction, it was also like, is it because women being able to choose, right? Like you've had all of, well, I don't say all of, because that's the wrong language here to use, but you've had a man that you didn't want to have, children with. You chose to get rid of it, and I think some men might be looking at that and saying, so that shows your character. You, one, try to shirk out any responsibilities, or you're loose and don't want to, you don't want to the consequences of what you were going to do, or three, you had the child and whatever. Like I think some men might also be looking at it trying to assail the woman's character, right, because of her choosing to do what she wishes with the with the pregnancy, right? So I think in two ways, and I think that way kind of ties more towards the degradation, right? Like
Right.
they're using it to say and degrade her value. Oh, you've had abortions, even though you don't have any kids, you've had abortions, so you're still a this, that, and the third, right? Or you've had kids and you're not. You've had kids by certain men and not others, so like you're trying to get something out of those certain men, et cetera, et cetera. Like I think that one ties more into degradation, and like the first one is like again the grape culture, the possession, the she's mine.
No, absolutely. Let me I'm gonna scroll real quick and see.
Hmm.
Obsidian said facts. A great self-reflection is to describe your mom. If most the qualities are of servitude, then that was super villain. Obsidian says compartmentalization keeps the left hand from knowing what the right hand is doing. Um, Golden one says it's simple. Allow me to make my own decisions. Lying is taking away my rights. Um, Marking, and then okay, I think this is where we got to as you were talking. Lowly says marking territory. It is possession. Uh, Didi says this is my type of live. Oh, thank you. They feel rejected. Her ability to choose negates his desire.
I like that
That's
one.
crazy. That
Yeah,
one,
I
that
like
was
that.
crazy.
I like that
It-
one.
yeah, it's like wow, and it goes into the whole 304 conversations because women who are actually quote unquote labeled 304s because they want to have relations, you don't want them. You know what I mean? But you want the women who don't want to have. So you want to coerce and persuade and connive and get those women to because that's the victory in that. That's the hunt. That's
Right, because like
crazy.
you don't get anything off of, and I think they look at the women who have already already had sex and already like got into that, got into be called that, even when they're not, because like that's the other thing they'll call, some men will call women a hoe because like they won't have sex with him but have sex with other men, like it's like that's her right as a person, right? But I think though it's again it's trying to categorize and give value to each woman. So like one, you can pit women against each other because like you'll see that happening because like you have the women that do get picked, right, chosen or whatever, which itself the language is crazy. But like you have the women that they say they want and go after, right? While still they'll get that woman and then cheat on her with the other group of women, right? And it's like and the argument or the excuse will be made is that, well, I mean, we're men, it's a weakness, this and that. Then it's like, well, no, that's not your nature. You're choosing to do that, right? I think the constant like back and forth, right? Because those are just ideologically inconsistent. The constant back and forth between saying, I want, a woman who's modest and doing this, that, and the third, but then going after and, still getting the women who you claim you don't. It's That's the one I can't wrap my brain around.
Yeah, if that's the case, then the actual sermon should be on male chastity. It should be on, you know, it should be you. No, you marry before you not necessarily carry. Marry before you distribute. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. Lennox asked, "What do y'all mean by great culture?" So, just to circle back to the beginning of the conversation, and maybe this is kind of one of those full circle moments. Like, so culture. When we talk about culture, if you're not an anthropologist, a culture is just a way to live, right? It's the way you live, right? So the way we live, let's say in America, the way we live incentivizes uh, the incentivizes conquest, basically. And you could go into capitalism with that. You could go into the history of America, how America itself was formulated. You know, what I mean, it was acquired through acts of violence. It was acquired through rape. It was acquired through chattel slavery. It was acquired from the taking of things from other people, including their bodies, right? The bedrock foundation of American society is based in part on grape. The reason why I look like this, the reason why I'm this light skinned, you know what I mean? My ancestors weren't this light. You know what I mean? They weren't this light because of grape. Right? And that's hundreds of years, right? Hundreds of years of that. And it didn't end with the Emancipation Proclamation. It didn't end because women are still getting snatched. If you go any milk carton, any you walk into any depending on what the shop is. A lot of times, the corner store, you go into like a not a Dairy Mart or a chain, but an actual corner store owned by people in the community. You will see a wall of missing persons, right? And a lot of them being black women and black little girls that are missing. What happens once they're missing? Great. You know what I mean? You look at sex trafficking, all of those things kind of undergird great culture, and not just those things, right? Because so well, I'm not driving around in a white van or whatnot, but the bedrock. And again, if you want to understand it, Google the great, and I say great because it's TikTok, but Google Great Culture Pyramid, and it just gives you a nice visual of what it looks like. On the bottom, you have behaviors that normalize this great culture. It normalizes your sexist attitudes, your unsavory jokes. Just grab them by the what I mean, all of those things. The locker room talk or whatnot. So that's normalizing the objectification and dehumanization of women, which is it's common. It's normal. It's not nothing strange happening here. Then you get into degradation. You get into behaviors that actually tear women down. You know what I mean? And not to put a circle around red pill talking points, but a lot of those are degrading talking points. They are specifically aimed at women to devalue them. You know what I mean? Or to put them in specific boxes. But then also behaviors like stalking. You look at behaviors like catcalling. You know what I mean? All of those things go into that degradation. And then finally you have assault. So the normalization leads to degradation, leads to assault. And that assault is protected by all those other behaviors at the base of that pyramid. So that whole thing that objectifies women, all of those things working together is great culture. It's the way that we live. The way that we live, the dehumanization of women is a matter of course, right? And so even to the extent where you establish your manhood based on your ability to be to coerce women, or to be coercive, or to be persuasive, or to kind of woo a woman out of her draws, so to speak. You know what I mean? And she didn't want to. Eventually, she looked at you, wasn't interested, but you did your one two. You were persistent. After weeks upon weeks upon weeks of you applying
Once in some
pressure,
places.
she finally gave in because she was tired. She's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what this person's gonna do. Seems a little office rocker. Here's the move. You approach a woman at a grocery store and you force her to put her number in your phone, and then you call her to make sure that the phone was the right phone number. And like, that's not intimidating. Like, you're gonna follow this person around and make sure you know that she's gonna probably lie to you because you're making her uncomfortable. But because you're making her uncomfortable, you just lean into that a little bit so that she gives you the right phone number. Now you can call her up until she changes her phone number. That harassment, the harassment is a big part of it as well. All that goes into great culture. I want to see, did Linux leave the room?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I might be talking to. I don't see no comments from Linux. Linux bounced. I don't know. But anyway, I chased Linux away. So sorry about that brief commercial. But that's what we're talking about. And we're so the second part of that, right? How does objectification?
Lennox said he's still here, bro.
Oh, get that. Okay, cool, cool. I was like, I don't know. No, I chased him away. I appreciate that. But does that make sense, brother? I just want to make sure. Okay, cool. I appreciate it. I chill. I'm chilling. But yeah, when I thought about, there was and I forget the article, but it was talking about the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And the state of Texas, banned abortion completely, I believe. And they were talking about, like, it was like 24,000 some odd grapes or pregnancies that came from grape since that law passed. And I was like, wow, is there a connection between you saying, hey, you don't have a choice whether to be pregnant or not, to saying you don't have a choice whether to have sex or not? You know what I mean? And I think it's the same attitude. It's the same attitude that says your body is not your own. You know what I mean? If I, so that's, oh wow. She said, thanks, Zena. She says 64 grapes and 64,000 grapes and 24,000 pregnancies. Summer says, yeah, it's connected, right?
64,000?
Yeah.
God damn.
And again, this conversation came out of men on this app saying that grape culture doesn't exist. When you have 64,000 grapes taking place in just one state,
I was about to in just Texas
it's
alone.
just Texas. It's not America. It's just Texas. You know what I mean? So and right, and that's what was reported. You know what I mean? Not what actually happened. So it's amazing to me the cognitive dissonance, the lengths of delusion that we will go to protect our own idea of ourselves, right? Because the reality is we don't want to think of ourselves as bad men. We don't want to think of ourselves as contributing to this bad thing. And so rather than getting even close to the thought that you might be a little bit culpable, that you might be a little bit guilty, you would rather deny 64,000 instances of this thing happening, reported, documented, and just say, "Oh, it doesn't exist." They're inflating those numbers. The statistics are wrong. You know what I mean? It's so that's why I want to have this conversation with you, brother, and I really appreciate it. So
Absolutely.
last question, right? How does objectification and normalization eventually lead to degradation and assault?
And that's as simple as if you make something out to be an object, right, a tool to be used a specific way, and that tool does not allow you to use it that specific way, that you're going to feel rejected from, and men do not have the emotional control to not get violent when they feel rejected. Apparently, like they're going to be violent towards the woman that rejected their advances, because to them that woman is supposed to supply sexual um uh pleasure to me, right? Like that's her role, because that's the role. Well, I'm sorry, that's the role I've assigned her because I see her dressed a certain way, right? She's supposed to supply sexual pleasure to me. So if she doesn't, she must be, a useless tool, so to speak. I think a lot of times if you objectify, people, when you see them as the object you've created them to be, right? Like back to the mother sister thing. Yes, like mother is like a person role, but like the role is more important than the fact that it's a person, right? So like if your mother's doing something mothers aren't supposed to do, I lose respect for my mother. You know what I'm saying? So I think when you make an object of someone, you've turned them into something that is very easy to degrade and abuse, because it's an object. It doesn't, an object doesn't have feelings, or an object's feelings don't matter, right? And I think that's where that comes in.
No, absolutely. Um, I want to, and I don't know what are you. How are you on time?
I'm chilling. It's Saturday.
Okay. Okay. So I typically don't do this, but I want, there, definitely people that, um, are in the comments. I've gotten a few requests to come up. And so what I like to do is bring people up one at a time and kind of, we'll engage, either make the comment or, ask the question. We'll kind of respond and we'll kind of do kind of one volley. So it's kind of one volley and drop. You make your comment, state your piece or ask your question. We'll kind of talk about it, maybe have a follow up question for you, and then the request is that you would drop and allow the next person to come up, because we just want to make sure that the people that are in the comment section, that their voices are heard, and then we'll do this for a little bit and then close out. But I want to say in advance, man, I definitely do appreciate you for joining me. I think this is a necessary conversation. I'd love to have you back for a part two or part three or whatnot, and yeah, the only thing I'll say about that question, because you said so much in that, is that if again, and we said this in the beginning, an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere, right? So if you're allowing one group of people to be for the normalization of their dehumanization and degradation and their assault, if you're allowing that and you're okay with that, right? Don't think it's just going to stop with that group, because we're not in a society where those things are not connected. So yeah, it starts with with the trans community, right? It starts with the LGBTQ community. It starts with Black women, but don't think it ends with you, because the goal is to dehumanize you as well. They're gonna get to you. They're gonna get to you later, right? And it's crazy to me that Black men struggle with this, because we've been in that process. We see how this works. We've experienced it. We've lived it, and yet because we got this carrot dangled over us, this carrot of patriarchy where, oh, but you might get some benefits, right? If you get a, certain person in office, or, you get, certain people in power, things can go back to where you can have your little bit of power too, that will participate in this. It's amazing to me to front to back process in the end process how these things work, and yet you'll still participate in it because it makes you feel like a man. But who told you what a man was? Where'd you get that definition from? But yeah, let's see.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so I'm gonna bring up Soul. Soul has been waiting for a little bit. So let's bring up Soul. She's been waiting for so long. I don't know if Soul is still in the. She may have to drop and come back out.
So you there? Because she said she wanted to ask me a question.
Yeah. Let me see how to. All right, I'm gonna just re-request so when you're ready, because I think it may have been you have been in the queue too long, um, to come up or whatnot. But yeah, if anybody wants to come up, ask a question, make a comment, give reflection on some of the things that have been said, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you're in the comments and you don't want to come up, if you have a question for Onyx or myself, just go ahead and post your question. If it's something that we miss in the comments, charge it to our head and not our heart, and just go ahead and repost that question. It's definitely appreciated. Okay, we got one. Let's see. Okay, super villain. So let's. Peace, family. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Fado. Hi, Onyx. This conversation was such a beautiful one. Yes, it was very necessary, and I think it's even more necessary for this to be ongoing. There were so many great points and moments of realization. I can't go through all of them, but if I could come up and say the most important thing or a great starting point is to recognize that when you do self reflection, right, or when you're trying to recognize the internal misogyny and the things that are happening because of patriarchy that shapes our attitude. That's a great place to start. And recognizing that those things doesn't mean you're a bad person as men or as women too, because women can be, male identified and also participate to these challenges. I just want to make a great point or just a little note that I've done childcare for over 10 years. And I believe like studying children is a great way to recognize human nature because for perfect example, which I tell everyone, young boys, especially that preschool age, right before they go to school, 3, 4 years old, where they can express themselves verbally, right, but they still haven't been so exposed to quote unquote patriarchy. You give a young boy a doll baby, he will rock the baby, he will feed the baby, he will change the baby's little diaper, he will put it in a crib. You put him in front of a kitchen set, he will season his little food, cook a little food on a little fake stove, he'll even wash the little dishes in a little fake sink. This is because misogyny is not in our nature as human beings. It's socialized. If a baby, a young man can recognize and have the humanity and the nurturing to take care of a little doll baby, that means it's not in our nature, or he would be knocking the doll baby between the little fake washer and little fake dryer, right? Even when they play with the little animal toys, right? I've noticed it's not like they go around with fake pews hunting the animals. If anything, they're more like little farmers, right? Taking care of the little animals in their farm. So this is just a cute little analogy to show that those type of characteristics, it is socialization. It is not in human nature. And that's why when the idea of, oh, it's in our nature or it's natural to men, no, I don't believe that. Because human beings in their most truest form, which is children, do not show those characteristics. So I just wanted to, just bring that idea to light. So when you're doing your self reflection and you can recognize these things, and I mean, people have done bad things, right? And I think recognizing that and admitting that is one of the first steps and self work that we can do. So I just wanted to come up here and just give that little tidbit. But I do appreciate this conversation. I even had some self realization that I need to work on. And I just appreciate you guys having me up here. Thank you.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for joining and thank you for listening.
That was a beautiful point too. Thank you.
No, I was. I'm seeing you said I have perished. Yeah, the illustration of the little baby doll being knocked between the little baby washer and dryer. I was like, oh my gosh, but it's so true. You know what I mean? And I think, but instead, a lot of times, one of the first toys that we put in our little boy's hands is a toy gun. You know what I mean? Yeah. Give me one second. I did actually see. So sorry, Zena. Yeah,
I
I was.
just saw it actually. Her question was, what do you think of men taking anti-misogyny classes before getting married, having children?
Um, I think that's an excellent idea. You know, what I mean, we talk about marriage counseling,
Yeah.
um, and and sometimes people don't even do that. A lot of times they don't even do that, but a lot of times that entails like the financial part and the religious part, and maybe you kind of raising the children. But yeah, there needs to be a a deconstruction of misogyny throughout that entire process. You know what I mean? Especially the basics. You know what I mean? Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a marvelous idea. And I think maybe even maybe even before that point, you know what I mean? Like maybe like forward thinking, like it should be a component in school. Like just like you have home
I
economics.
was about to say, just like home ec, yep, just like
Yeah,
home ec.
you should have those things should be done right in school, and it's crazy because a lot of times our kids disconnect from school because they don't see the topics that they're covering actually relating to their lives. You know what I mean? But if you had a class like that right there in school, yeah, I'm like, man, I can't wait to get to Mr. Wilson's class or Mrs. Wilson's class to talk about the next topic because we're talking about stuff that's being talked about online every day. But where do they get a chance to filter through that stuff? You know what I mean? Because at that age, that's when they're being indoctrinated with it. So I feel like rather than wait until you're in your late 20s, early 30s, early 40s, and you get ready to get married to start deconstructing your misogyny, I think those classes. But I think it should definitely be a mandatory part. Like women should demand it. Like you got to go through this course before you even date me. Give me your certificate. I need the graduation certificate. Where's your Carfax?
Exactly.
How many
What
of
was
these
your
classes have you
GPA? Now, what
successfully
was your
passed?
GPA? Did you
Right,
magna
right,
cum laude?
right.
Whole time.
Well, what's your emotional intelligence score? I need to run the figures. But no, if I mean real talk, if there was that type of language, just like when you make any other type of acquisition that you have that history, like what if your dating history was like online, and people gave you reviews like on Yelp, like 10 out of 10 would not recommend.
Hey, no, hold on. That's $1 billion idea whole time. That's $1 billion idea whole time.
But yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. But yeah, I think the younger the better. I mean, as soon as um, children or young adults begin thinking about SMEX, they need to be thinking about deconstructing from misogyny. You know what I mean? Like at that same time, because if you're old enough to have sex, you're old enough to be sexist, and even younger than that. You know what I mean? But honestly, the entire culture needs to change. She said 0 out of 10 would not recommend.
Could you imagine?
I took that from Crystal. Crystal always says that. She's like,
That's hilarious.
yeah, absolutely. Great question, Tina.
Is Soul back or she in here?
Yeah, and there's a lot of like what's the name of it? It's several like online platforms that you can like create a training course and it just be online. Like I don't think it has to take a lot of time, Zena. Like if that's something you're called to do, there's several like I can't think of one of the do I have it on my phone still? Because I was uh looking at it, see so I have it. I'll inbox you because there's several platforms where you can just that's specifically for like that type of training. You could just set up a course and it's like pay, you register for a course like anywhere else and take the course, right? So I think it's awesome. Uh, What says, unfortunately, the misogyny starts immediately after children are born. Yeah, that's true. Um, Another Sarah says, do you think misogyny is rooted, nourished by fear of being without power? Um, yeah,
I'd say
I would
yes.
say yes. Like an emphatic yes, actually to that. You know what I mean? Because a lot of the oppressive structures are based on a scarcity mindset, not just misogyny, right? Capitalism, even like you get to homophobia, it's like we're not gonna have enough babies, so we gotta be homophobic. So yeah, I think misogyny is not, to put it in like a socialist terms, we as men don't own the means of production for life, right? Women do. So there's a struggle to control the means of production. And out of that struggle to control the means of production comes misogyny, which I like Kate Mann's definition of misogyny, where it's like misogyny is like the policemen of the patriarchy, where as soon as women get out of line, out of this narrow ideal for them as patriarchy, misogyny comes to forcibly put them back in line. So it's like the force of sexist ideologies, where sexism is kind of like the scientific, justification and things of that nature. Misogyny is the violence that comes along with to keep women in line, to control the means of production, whether that be access to smacks or access to the making of babies. I think it's the same. What about you, Onyx?
I, I think that's actually exactly like I said. It's exactly what it is. If you fear that women gaining any amount of power is taking power from you, then your power, one, was not earned, right? It was stolen, because like they'd essentially be gaining power back that you took from them. So you have a fear of losing power that you never should have had in the first place, right? But like two, it's also that idea that I can no longer utilize you as I have if you gain any more power. It's the same reason we weren't allowed to read as slaves, right? Like you can't take advantage of people who know what, you're saying and doing to them now because they know the language, right? So I think for a lot of men, they hold on to those privileged power structures because they feel like they would lose out too much if women gained even a little.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's straight facts. That's straight facts. And it's crazy because it's like the same. This and this again. This is the same logic though. The same men who are saying that women are inferior are the same men that are trying to handicap women so that they can't. What I mean, because they're saying, oh, women are outperforming us. Women, they're taking our resources. Oh, there's no place that I can be a man now. What I mean? Because the the only atmosphere where we're saying that men are superior is the ability to commit violent acts, right? And that's not the society that we want to live in. That's bad for everybody.
At all.
Dee Dee says, where does white supremacy come in? So I think about, so I'm coming from an American context. So when I think about the founding of America, it was based to benefit whitey male landowners, right? So that's how American society was set up. Those are the people that could originally vote, and have political influence and social influence. And so part of that, even white tea women were dehumanized. They were placed on this pedestal, what I mean, where they were idealized and couldn't, we're basically saying, hey, you're here as a breeding mechanism, right? Oh yeah, and the religious component too. Let's not forget about it being Protestant. So, and when we get into that whole Western train of thought, where we're talking about private property. Not only can I own land and that wasn't mine, I can own people that I dehumanize. Women aren't allowed to get bank accounts. All of that comes from the white supremacist structure that celebrates maleness, what I mean, and denigrates femininity, what I mean, sees it as a weak thing. And you see it baked into their religion, baked into their practices, baked into laws. So all of that circumstances white supremacy. Not to give the illusion that patriarchy started in Europe, it didn't, but it definitely flourished there and was exported in a very in its most toxic form.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was gonna say, if you look at different cultures, obviously, like it's not like they were all just like these perfect cultures naturally, but the very specific way that we see like patriarchy here in in the Western world, and then as it's spread across, obviously because of how much influence the Western world has now. You look at ancient, or older cultures like the Native American cultures would oftentimes have leadership that I'm not going to say was equal, right? But like it was definitely much more balanced, as you would have like, obviously like the chief or the I want to say political military leader of the village, right? And then you'd also have like the spiritual leader of the village who would oftentimes be, a woman. And so like you have like different ways that societies were structured in different places in the world. And then when you have, Western society, which we know for the most part is European and therefore Caucasian, take over, and they spread this very specific hierarchical structure, right? That's man on top, man on top, woman, and children, and then they spread that everywhere, right? So, like, I think that's where white supremacies tie in because they have such influence over the way that people see families, right? Like, for example, the nuclear family, right? People think of the nuclear family as like the de facto family unit and like how it's supposed to look, but like the idea of the nuclear family was literally created in the 1950s because after World War II, you had a lot of women that did not want to go back into the home because they had been out in the factories helping build the warplanes and tanks and stuff for the war. And so they created the idea of the nuclear family with the wife in the house and the husband out working to get to get the social order back in order, right? It didn't exist before then. And like even if you think about and look at like old movies that go like that are before the 50s, like look at family structures in those movies. Like everybody lived in the same house, right? Like grandma lived there, grandpa, uncles, and like everybody lived in one house, right? Like that's how they had family structures before and prior to the idea and creation of the nuclear family. So like when you look at the way that white supremacy has designed family to look and designed our social order and structure to go with men on top, that's why we see it so prevalent and so ubiquitous now. Because like they created this system, right? Because that's the order that they wanted for whatever reason. And you don't see that order everywhere.
Gonna bring on another.
Hello, hello.
Peace, family. How are you?
Good,
Hola.
how are you? Hi, Onyx. I
Hola.
love both of you all's content. I wanted to come up and say hi and, of course, talk a little shit because this is like one of my favorite topics to talk about. But I have like two questions for the two of you all. My first question is a little mild, is that I'm always coming across men who are actively working on dismantling patriarchy, undoing their own misogynistic and sexist teachings, because it's just heavily embedded in society that like very similar to what Jane Elliott has said. If you've gone through the education system in this country, whether you want to or not, you're going to come out on the other side of racist because that's just how a lot of our teachings and our learnings and systemically things are set up to teach white supremacy. So you have to be actively thinking about how to undo your racism or the racist teachings that you've learned for you to actually be an ally. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to men. So like earlier, someone mentioned, do you think it's a good idea that people are in therapy or that they're asking their partners before they get married if they have started to actively work on decentering a lot of the misogynistic and sexist teachings that they have learned? And I think that's awesome. But I know a lot of men are not doing that because we don't really focus our mindset around dismantling the patriarchy and men working on that too. Like we really talk to white people about like, yeah, if you really want to be an ally and you really want to work on your anti-racism, you got to do this. But we're not really talking to men about working on their anti-sexism or their anti-misogyny. So the first question I have for the two of you all is like, what was the catalyst for you to say, I need to start looking inward. I might actually be perpetuating harm to the women around me or to the women in my community, or I have been complacent in the harm or abuse of other women. I'm not necessarily saying that you all have, But what was kind of like the turning point that you wanted to actively work on your anti-misogyny, work on reading women literature, become a little bit more expansive in your knowledge of women and their history?
I can take that first. So, for me, and TikTok played an integral part of this, but I was a deacon for about on and off for about 10 years, two different churches, on trial. Became a radical Christian back in 2007, um, and joined the church around the same year I got married. And the way, and mind you, the church that I joined, not to say that about everybody's church, but the church that I joined, the way I internalized Christianity, it was very patriarchal. You know what I mean? So as a man, I was supposed to be the priest, the provider and protector of my household. And even though I came from a single parent home, my mother raised me. Um, I was, still in that stage of trying to establish myself as a real man. You know what I mean? And so, because of that, like I made my marriage a miserable thing because I was more involved and invested in the church and propagating the gospel and knocking on people's doors and on all of that stuff than actually building a foundation with my partner. You know what I mean? So, and I'm thankfully still married now, but yeah, I almost didn't make it. Like almost didn't make it. And so about 2017, I had two things because I used to sing, and I was singing every Sunday, and I just felt this just emptiness, and it wouldn't go away. I felt like I wasn't being fed spiritually, and I felt like I wasn't able to feed anyone spiritually, and so I stepped down as a deacon, and I stepped down from all my positions, and I stopped going to church, and I just took some time to really deal with me. At that same time, my brother-in-law passed away, and my other brother-in-law got this case for as a police officer. So like all this trauma happened at once, right? And me and my wife were really on at odds ends at that point. And not going to church every Sunday and not going to Bible study every Wednesday and in this rigmarole of work, church, home, gave me time to think. You know what I mean? And I started deconstructing Christianity first and really thinking about why I believed what I believed, aside from the assumptions. Like I made a lot of assumptions that, and excuses for the history of Christianity. I glossed over that because I was focusing on the faith. And so that I got into therapy was another milestone because again, we were on the outs. So it was like critical, we need to start therapy now. So I got into therapy, and I think for a lot of times therapy gets a bad rap because of the assumptions we make about therapy. Therapy is about you're the person doing the work. You know what I mean? And I went to therapy at first looking for someone to fix me or find some type of problem, like you might take a car into the shop and get an oil change. You know what I mean? Or even go to the doctor and then get a diagnosis. It's not that. It's beginning to unpack everything that is you, the things that have happened to you, the trauma that you've gone through. So it took me a couple therapists to get through that process. And then I got on TikTok when the pandemic happened, and that really got me isolated and with myself. You know what I mean? And I started to look at racism differently and started because I was on here doing poetry. I thought I was gonna die. Because I actually caught COVID and all those things. And I saw a couple friends pass away, and that life threatening. And I'm sorry it came to that for me, but looking at my mortality, because I got 3 daughters, I'm like, what am I leaving them? You know what I mean? What am I leaving behind for them? What type of legacy do I have? Not legacy in them carrying on my name, but legacy in what I've left them with as a man, as a father to a daughter. And then I started to be confronted, especially when Kevin Samuels got big on this app. I started to really get confronted with a lot of stuff that my daughters were getting confronted with. And I'm like, wait a minute. And so that got me I went through about a year of I'm just gonna promote women content creators. I'm just gonna read, women, books on feminism, watch YouTube videos on feminism, and really deal with me in that way. And now I'm having the best year of my life in my marriage. Once I got rid of all that stuff, but it took some time. It took about 5 years from 2017 to now. Yeah, about 5 good years to get a lot of that stuff out of me, and it's still a struggle every day. Because I don't want to say that I've arrived anywhere, but it's once I was able to let go of those fundamental assumptions about who God is, that God is a man or a male, about the way manhood is defined, that manhood is defined by the conquest and dominion of women, and that how do I see value in myself? And that's why this is called the Will to Change Project, because a critical part of my deconstruction process was seeing myself as a valuable human being first, and then all the other things that I do are being additions to that, as opposed to I am worth something because of what I do and the sacrifices that I make. So that's just part of it. I don't want to be too long winded. I'll pass it over to Onyx, and thank you for the question.
No, that is actually a great question. Um, and thank you for your journey, brother, letting us know your journey. For me, it was like I said, when I was younger, I was always like the nerdy geek. I was into Pokemon, Godzilla, things that people wouldn't be into normally, especially being black, right? So I didn't have much. I didn't have much in the way of romantic interaction with women, in my younger years. But like I said, I also though had a lot of female friends. I had women I was close to, regardless, like within my age range. And so when I got to college, I went to Morehouse College. It was 2012. That was my freshman year. I had like met this young lady and was talking to this young lady, and like that went on for maybe like several weeks. And like because this is the beginning of college, right? This is freshman year, so she, starts talking to or dating someone else. And I remember being like crushed by this, and like I remember going on Twitter and like having like a little rant. I was like, and I couldn't even say nothing like she picks like thugs because like we're all in college. So like I couldn't even I couldn't even say no bullshit like that. So I was just like, girls don't like, nerdy or geeky boy, men or some rant like that, right? And I had a friend on Twitter that reached out to me who I went to high school with who had actually gotten into Spelman, right? And she like reached out to me in a DM and she was like, yo, can I talk to you? Right. And like I was like, cool, she talks to me. She's like, bro, one, she's like, I'm a woman and you're saying a whole bunch of like shit about women and like we friends. Like, that's not cool. One. She's like, two, you having this whole rant, like you haven't passed over women that were interested in you, right? And like because of whatever reason, right? They were either this or that or the third, or, nerdy or geeky. Like you passed over women for the same reason that you think you're getting passed over. She's like, three. And like she just like read the fuck, like when I say read the fuck out of me, read me, right? She was like, and if you don't change, like we won't be friends because I can't like that energy. And I was like, damn, right? And so like and mind you, like I thought to myself the same type of thing that like a lot of men will think, I'm not sexist because I don't rape women, I don't abuse women, I don't this, that, and the third. So in my mind, I'm like, I got a lot of female friends, like women are cool with me, they trust me, blah, 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 right? So I'm like, I can't be. And like when she went through that list, I was like, you feel, because like it's a friend that said that to me, right? So it's like I know you said that in love, and like you didn't have to come to me and say that. You could have been like, fuck this nigga, right? And like, so I was like, you know what? One, she's right. Two, the things she brought up are not hard to see, and like I said, I'll always go through something. All right, you know what? One, like I gotta think about what she just said. She's right. Like I have passed over people. I have, right, for very arbitrary reasons too, right? Like, I can't be mad if somebody looks at me the same way because women have a right to have preferences and all that the same, right? Like I really went through the things she said and I was like, you know what? Okay, it's time for me to learn more about my blind spots, right? Because clearly I've been blind. And mind you, at the time, like I said, I'm at Morehouse and Spelman is right there. Spelman has like leading in, women's studies and gender studies and so on and so forth. So I actually took several classes at Spelman because I also took classes in French at Spelman. So like when I was over there for French, like somebody showed me they had gender studies. I took a couple classes over the course of my time at Morehouse until I graduated. And like from there, it was also just every single day, it's okay, what am I doing? How am I interacting? How am I presenting myself to one, the world, the people around me, but also the women around me? How am I presenting how am I interacting with them? Are those interactions based in a genuine authenticity to who I say I am? Or are they based in conditioned responses to who I was made to be, right? And like it takes it takes it takes such a hard look at yourself that like sometimes you do feel like a villain, right? Like you do feel like a damn, like there's some things I've said or some things I've done or some things I didn't do that I should have done that like really like, but like if you allow that to, I guess, slow you down and like, well, I'm a lost cause, like, no, don't do it again and stop other people from doing it, right? Don't be that and don't let that just stop you and just be in the world as a person that doesn't just, doesn't do harm, but like also choose to do good, right? And so I am constantly learning. There was a time when Breonna Taylor's case happened. A friend of mine and I were all at like a friend's house. And one of my friends, she was like, we were talking about like the police brutality that had been happening because that was in the summer of 2020, I think, so like June. And we were talking about all like just the things that have been going on, all the people that have been, unalived. And like she brought up to her boyfriend, right? She was like, do you know Breonna Taylor? And he was just like, who? Right? And she was like, do you know Breonna Taylor? She looked at me. I was like, yeah, I've heard the name, I think. This is at like maybe a couple days after, I think maybe like 3 days after Breonna Taylor had been, unalived. She said she was unalived too not that same weekend, but I think around the same time that, Floyd was. And like most of y'all don't know her, right? Boyfriend didn't know who she was, right? It's like y'all don't see us, right? When it happens to us, like we're not seen, right? And like that was another time where it's like, damn, another blind spot. But like you look at the blind spots and say, thank you for covering it. Thank you for seeing it. Thank you for pointing it out. Now I know where to start looking, right? And like that's been my journey. I have people that point those out to me. I sometimes see them myself if I notice patterns in myself, and I try to cover them, and then I try to show other people. Thank you for that question. Oh, that was a great question.
No, thank you. The both of you all. I'm sorry, is my mic great? Hold on. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
You're good.
Thank you. That was actually beautiful from the both of you all. I absolutely appreciate you all sharing your stories. And I think it's important for people to kind of hear this story because I think a lot of people go back and forth in the lives. But I always want people to understand like what we're trying to ask men is not to say that you need to basically villainize yourself for your past, right? I think that's why there's such hesitation when white tea people are asked to be held accountable. It's not to say like we're asking for you to take 40 lashings for what your grandfather did. We're just asking for you to move forward and correct what has happened in the systems that are in place. And I'm appreciative of men like both of you who can share your stories of like, yes, I know I have some blind spots and I was very much so conditioned in deconstructing Christianity and then moving it to another place where I am now the happiest in my marriage. And I just want to say congratulations. I love to hear that this is a bigger picture. And like, these are the steps towards positivity and towards change that I love to see, which Onyx, you are bringing me to the second question that I wanted to ask the both of you all is that one of the conversations that I have on this app all the time with Black men specifically is that Black men did not create the patriarchy, so therefore they should not be held responsible for the effects of the patriarchy. And I have to have the conversation with Black men a lot of times, similarly that I have with white tea women, is that no, you did not create the system, therefore you do benefit. So how have you all been able to have conversations with other Black men to help them see those blind spots? Because a lot of times it's just so difficult to get Black men to start deconstructing their misogyny and their sexism because they don't think they are responsible for the patriarchal system that's in place.
You want to take? I can take that first, actually, if you don't mind, bros. So for me, it's been a process of one trying to relate them, like trying to relate it to something they care about, right? Because as someone in the comments pointed out earlier, a lot of men just don't care, right? To change, right? I think yes, many men are afraid of vilifying themselves and being looked at as villain and evil and so on. But some men just don't care because they think it's their right, And so oftentimes the process with them for me is like, if you look at someone say, like I've listened and heard men say things like, there's certain women that you just that's what she used to play like a toy essentially. That's what she's to be used for. And like you look at them and you think, okay, your sister is very attractive. I guarantee you there are men looking at your sister saying the same thing, and they get violent with me, and I'm like, I'm just showing you exactly what you are, right? Like I'm just showing it to you, right? And like some of those men, yeah, they'll try to fight you, right? And you gotta talk like, bro, I'm just doing exactly what you just did. Like that's all I did, right? Because that's somebody's sister. Because like you're not gonna see her as a person. Clearly, the way you just spoke about her, you not like you called that woman a toy. But somebody looking at your sister saying the same thing, right? The exact same thing, and thinking the same thing that you're thinking now, right? You're getting violent with me. You should be violent with that other man. You should be violent with yourself. You should change so that you're not violent anymore, right? And like for other men, the conversation is, okay, so if you know that something is wrong to do because you wouldn't want it done to you, why do you think it's okay, or why do you turn a blind eye to it being done to women? Right? Why do you have to care about a person to not want things that should not happen to them? Right? Like that's why we have laws and justice systems. You don't want that criminal out there, even if they didn't do anything to you or anybody you care about, because eventually it could happen to you, right? Or somebody you care about, right? But like you don't want it happening, period, because that makes the entire society safer, right? And like, does that not make more logical sense, right? And like you'll get people that try to argue that it doesn't. And like then you're like, now prove that it doesn't, and they can't, right? So I think it's oftentimes trying to get somebody to see from a perspective that there is no benefit from them to see it from, right? And like a lot of men, because they think, black men specifically, because they think, that's the white man's way of doing things. We have a different way, or we had a different way in Africa, we this, that, and the third. And it's like, one, you don't know that. You haven't studied that truly, right? Nobody alive knows that because we don't really know how things went down, right? But also, like, and I'm trying to make this last part make sense. If you consider something bad in any capacity, like from your own personal moral perspective, consider something bad, it should not matter why it exists, who precipitates it, who are the victims. It shouldn't matter. The bad things shouldn't happen. And so if you believe yourself to be good, you should be actively trying to stop and prevent the bad thing from happening. Right. And like that's kind of been my process to it, because like dealing with people who are apathetic to it can be challenging. I'm not gonna lie to you.
No, I mean, Onyx, I love you, brother. Like, you are a wise man. You know what I mean? You're wise because you can look at the experiences of other people and learn from them and apply them to your life and be able to make positive changes because of that, right? And I really wish there was a lot of the majority of men were wise in that way. Unfortunately, a lot of men will only change if and when they experience traumatic experiences in their own life where these things play out. And I can't tell you how many 40-year-old and 50-year-old men I've talked to that are broken up inside, you know what I mean, because of how these ideologies have played themselves out. Because patriarchy at its foundation is a lie, right? It's a lie, but if you repeat a lie over and over again so many times, it feels and sounds like the truth, because some people are going to benefit from it. Maybe not everyone, but as long as you can point to some people, the tokens, then that lie can continue, right? So for me, like my approach, and I think you said it was kind of built into the question. I've tried to make parallels between racism and sexism because they come from oftentimes come from the same people, even though in my studies I learned that patriarchy is so much older than white supremacy, so much older. But the principles now, as we see them, are put together, and put forth from the same people. And so I'll try to say, like, hey, look, remember when this happened? Like you said, remember when George Floyd happened? Did you see the same thing happen to Breonna Taylor? Can you see the correlation between how you experience racial oppression, how that makes you feel, how that affects your life? Could you imagine a world where that was happening to women, right? And I tried to make that parallel. However, the cognitive dissonance is so deep that there's not a lot of empathy to work with. You know what I mean? Because we've been desensitized to the suffering of other people. So even when that parallel is made intellectually, sometimes it's not enough. So what I've tried to do with my channel is have a very selective focus on, first of all, centering women, centering the black women specifically, and trying to expose whoever may be listening, women, white people, people from other races, black men, whoever, to their stories and to what their thoughts are, what their experiences are. So I did a lot of duets. Sometimes I'll just go silent and just do duets on this app. I've tried to just focus on male accountability. So taking myself out of the argument completely of the gender war and who's right, who's wrong, and only dealing with what men can do. Right. Okay. So yeah, we know that these things happen on both sides, but what is your responsibility? What did you do to contribute to it? How can you be a better man? Right. And exposing men to that trail of thought, and ultimately just being consistent with that on app, and off app. You know what I mean? Just trying to, when I have conversations, making sure that I do the same thing, center women, center black women, and try to humanize the experience of life in general. And I think that's the third thing. Just, I don't think we've sat down and really taught about and thought about what it means to be human. Like, what does it mean to be a human being? When I say, we need to see women as human beings, I don't think a lot of people know what I mean. I don't think a lot of people know what it means to be human in their own sense, because we function in a society that tells you everything but that. It tells you to function like a machine, grind culture. You need to wake up at 4 in the morning and go to sleep at 3 in the morning and work until you're rich, even though we know that that's not going to be possible for most men and most women. Most people are not going to be billionaires. The system is set up for that to not happen. It's mathematically impossible. But you can just continue to jump on that hamster wheel and step on everybody that's underneath you in the process. And as long as you're stepping on somebody, it doesn't matter that you're being stepped on. You should just take joy in the fact that you get to step on other people. And a lot of those people, especially in our community, are women and children. You know what I mean? Those are the people that suffer most. So, but if we're saying that we want to have liberation and we want to have a better way of life as a quote unquote marginalized community, right? And we're appealing for that from other groups. We'll just say other groups for the sake of TikTok. Then how can we at the same time deny what people within our community are asking from us? Like, hey, wait a minute. I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. Can you see me? I'm trans. Can you see me? I'm a black woman. Can you see me? No, you know what I mean? It's this way. It's my way or the highway. Might is right. Father knows best. It's God's will, right? So that's what I try to do. Is it as effective? I've seen both men and women reach out to me, DM me and say, hey, I really appreciate this, on an individual level. And I think that that's good, but it's so much more that's needed. It's so many more men that need to step up and speak. Like if you disagree at this point, if you disagree with red pill talking points, if you disagree with white supremacy, if you disagree with these things, you have to be vocal about it. You have, at the very least, you have to be vocal about it, because they're very vocal about what they believe. Even if their belief is wrong, they're very vocal about it. So if you believe in treating people with compassion and empathy, and you really want to see our world change, you have to do something about it.
And why are men punished so harshly by other men when they do speak out and when they do speak up, and they're called simps and the most horrible names, because pandering, I'm pretty sure you all have gotten for speaking up and speaking out against this. And it's very similarly what they would call, I guess, white tea people, N-word lovers, when they would speak out against racism. And when we make those type of correlations, I have to make those type of correlations sometimes with black men, because they don't get it. That a lot of white people would be called N-word lovers because they would speak up about racism the way that you all are being called pandering and simps for speaking up about misogyny and sexism, because I don't think a lot of men understand that this is an actual system. Like, it's very interesting that we can all understand that racism is systemic and that it's embedded into our laws and the way that we operate in this country. But it's so disheartening that men can't see that misogyny and patriarchy is also a system that is embedded into our laws and creates the way that we live in this society. So why such vitriol from men when they see men speak up about something that is a real thing that women go through?
If I could take this one first, like, well, first of all, to your point about racism, I think the mistake that a lot of white people make is they think that racism was just made to control people of color and black people specifically. No, racism was made to control you too, right? So, the reason why, they instituted racism was so that poor white people could feel validated and not revolt and not get upset and uphold, can create an upheaval in the power system against rich white people. You know what I mean? So now, because I'm complacent, because I feel I'm better, even though I'm the poorest of the poor, the most uneducated, I'm darn near on the verge of starvation in my Appalachian home. You know what I mean? Now, but I can feel better about myself because at least I'm not black, at the very least. And if I get bored, I can always go and just have a barbecue, right, or a picnic rather. But it's a mechanism control for the entire society. It tells white people what they can and cannot do as well as what it tells black people. But if you went and you sat with a colored person, quote unquote colored person, for the time in the colored section, you were looked at. You could be an act of violence. White people got unalived as well in marches. So to bring that over to misogyny, and sexism, misogyny is not just a mechanism to control women, though it is a method of doing that. It's also to kind of maintain the imperial up-down structure of misogyny. So in order for you to be a man, you talk about chivalry. Chivalry was with rules for knights. It wasn't just for the conduct of how you treat women. And I think it's how knights should behave, in their religious order. So now you have this strict code that includes how you treat women, when you can marry, how you should marry, how you should court a woman, all of these different things, how you and when you should have sex. This is just also male regulation, right? So when people talk about pro-life, pro-choice, and you're looking at the control of a woman's body, understand it's just a Bible verse away from controlling what men do with their bodies, right? So yeah, misogyny is not just a method of control for women. And then when you look at women's liberation and what the women's liberation movement has done, it expanded. The men's liberation movement was born out of women's liberation. I don't think if there wasn't a women's liberation movement, I don't think there would be a red pill or this method of rediscovering what it means to be a man. Men wouldn't even be thinking about it, right? So we wouldn't even be thinking about domestic violence shelters for men, right? They wouldn't even have that talking point. So it's a form of insanity to me that male rights activists who abhor feminists are going on about these things that need to humanize men when it's women looking for their own humanity that even cause those questions to be asked in the first place historically, right? So if you do a little bit of study, you can recognize, like, wait a minute, if the women's liberation movement and women being able to determine their own destiny is intrinsically tied to my ability as a man to be able to determine my own destiny and to see myself as human. And when you make that connection, now it's not just about you doing someone a favor and doing something for women. You are doing something for yourself and for women at the same time, if that makes sense.
I was gonna bring up like the example of the X-Men and like how they were like meant to be, a stand-in for the civil rights movement, for like black people during the civil rights movement, with MLK being represented by Professor Xavier and Magneto representing Malcolm X, right? And like the Caucasian community understands it then, right? Like they get oppression then, right? It's like, oh, they're treating the mutants so bad, they shouldn't be treated that way. Why is that happening? The government needs to be checked. They yada yada. They're just trying to live. They can't control the fact that they have these powers. Yada 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 yada. Right? They get oppression then, right? They get it so clearly then, and then you say, yeah, okay, that's how we feel as black people. They're like, what? That doesn't make any sense, right? Even though they see like exactly how it plays out, they see exactly how it works in X-Men, right? Like exactly how it could be legally done, and they see it legally done in the real world, but they don't think, right? It's the same way with like men to women, right? We can see it happen, oppression with ourselves, and think, yeah, this, we see exactly how it happens, how it works, why it works, the systems that are invisible, that don't have laws that specifically state yada, yada, yada. And then women speak up and say, cool, okay, y'all do that to us. No, we don't. This is just the way things are, right? Even though that's the same thing that the white people will say to us. This is just the way things. This is the order. You're supposed to be under us because we have white skin. We're superior. Yada yada yada. And so I think for a lot of men, it's hard to see yourself as the oppressor. It is hard to see yourself as the bad guy. Nobody wants to, especially because a lot of men think themselves as the good guy, a good man, right? And like, I have this theory that like when people use good, they use different definitions of the word good, right? And like for a lot of men, the good they use is meritocracy or a merit-based good, right? Because like for them, being good is I don't hit women, I don't abuse women. Being good is I have a job, I have a car. It's like a checklist, right? And then for someone else, it might be behavioral. It's like how you treat people. Are you good to people, right? And so I think for a lot of men, seeing themselves as not good because these things I do are harming to other people. And if I accept what these people are telling me is harming, then I am the perpetrator of that harm. I can no longer call myself good. That's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. It's like perspective breaking, right? You have to see yourself now as this person causing harm in a similar way that harm has been caused to you, right? At a systemic level.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you, y'all, for letting me be up here. I got to ask a couple questions. I love both of you all, and I hope you all have an amazing weekend.
Thank you.
You
You
too.
as
Thank you
well.
so much. We're
Peace.
gonna bring up one more person in the form of Summer.
Hey,
Summer, how are you?
good. How y'all doing today?
Thank you so much for
Well,
listening.
Yeah, good conversation. Something I see happening also is as a lot of men are not a lot, but the only ones I speak to are deconstructing and working through all of this is this idea of see me as the good guy and treat me differently because I'm not like all these other guys. At least I read some feminist literature. I understand a little bit, and so I recently had to explain, like, yeah, but it's still dangerous a lot of times to be around men. We have to vet you. If we choose to be alone with you, it's like, it can be very scary because not just my background, but every woman I know. So I have to take certain precautions. And like, a lot of men seem to resent that. Like, well, I'm not like that. So why hold me to that standard? And it's like, because anytime I am around you, I'm taking a risk because it's not strangers who are doing these things to us a lot of times. It's men who are in close proximity. It's your friend, it's your coworker, it's the one you're dating. So I see that a lot, and I don't know if y'all have encountered that. Also, that's why some people say it's pandering because they think, oh, they're just doing that to get close to women. I don't, I think we can see pandering, we can see who's doing it. I don't think that's true, but there is this idea that I use a couple of these keywords, so I'm a good guy, so don't challenge me.
yeah, no, that absolutely goes on. Like, absolutely. And I heard, like, I had a friend say once that the good guy trope, right? So a good guy is just an introverted bad guy. And like that rang in my head for so long because oftentimes what you'll see is that they're using the proximity and access they gain to women by saying, I don't do these things, I'm learning this, I'm trying to be better, so like, why are you challenging me? I am a great guy. They're still trying to gain access, right? Instead of I just want to be a better human being, right? And I think the difference in like intention behind why they get into it, right? If you get into something because you are expecting anything to be given to you, you got into it for the wrong reason, right? Like, period. If you get into something because you wish to see a better version of yourself for yourself, that's the right reason, right? And so, like, in Fatal's case, he spoke of this was not the best version of myself for me or my family or the people I care about, right? So he wanted to be better, so he took the time to, I want to actually grow to be better for me and the people around me, right? and not just to gain from it. And like you said, it takes time, because I think a lot of those men too will start doing that and think that it should be an immediate see. So now I'm going to be a better catch, right? And so there's a frustration when it doesn't go or go as planned, right? And I think a lot of them are just using it as an access tool.
Absolutely. As I was listening to your question, I don't know if I answered the previous question about simps and all that fully either. Like I think um, we come full circle, right? We started this conversation actually talking about the phrase "it's all men until it's no men," right? And the legitimacy of that phrase. And I feel like what you describe in asking your question is the justification for it's all men until it's no men. It's not that you're saying that all men are inherently evil, right? Even though you might be able to make the argument based on the socialization process, not of men the person, right, but of man the concept, right? When you say, oh, who's the man in the relationship, right, you're saying who is the dominant person in that relationship, and you're assuming that the dominant person in that relationship is always male. So there is some inherent sexism, embedded in the concept of what it means to be a man in this society. And so you could make the argument that it's all men until it's no men on that basis, but it's more so like, yo, I don't know which of you are safe and which is not safe based on what you project, based on your ideas, based on the environment and the climates that's been created. And so I can't blame a woman for taking precautions, right? That only makes sense. In fact, as a man, I should take precautions too. You're dealing because ultimately you're dealing with someone that you don't know, and if you think you can't get got just because someone is a woman, you're fooling yourself, right? So you should take precautions too. That's what I mean. It comes back down to valuing yourself, right? Because you think that you're basing your sense of self based on how many people you can sleep with, and adding a notch to your belt is more important than actually, practicing safe sex, than actually practicing safe protocols, making sure you don't get set up. All those type of things that men, express they have concerns about, but only express it when it's in contrary to a woman expressing what she's going through. You know what I mean? You say, oh, we're talking about great culture and we're focusing on women. Well, what about men? Well, why aren't we having a conversation amongst men about what men do to other men, right? No, we only bring that conversation up as a retort to women bringing up the conversation on how they experience us, right? So the concept of a good man, what is good to me, I had to wrestle with this heavily because of my Christian background. And for me, it was like when we talk about Christianity, the concept Jesus said that why thou callest me thou good? There is none good but God, right? And the way I was trained, because I did like the way the master and all this other stuff, we started out with that conversation. Like, would you consider yourself a good person? And then systematically through verses in the Bible would show you why you're not a good person, reveal your sins to your guilt before God so that you might accept the gospel, right? That was the whole methodology. 90% law, 10% grace, according to like Spurgeon, right? So it amazes me that when we get into this conversation, these same religious men who read from this same religious book, all of a sudden, all good men, when the book you study from says that you're not good. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? The Paul, the man that wrote all the letters to the churches said, "Oh, wretched man that I am." Right? That was what Paul said about himself. So how are we? Because people don't read their Bible,
Yeah.
and people only pick and choose the parts of Christianity that benefit them and make them feel good. Do we have this conversation of, well, I'm a good man, right? And so now we're trying to, and taking it outside of that, right? Good is a subjective term. You might be good to one person, right? And be utterly evil to the other person because you cut them off in traffic, right? And so the only way they experienced you is as an evil man who doesn't, practice good road etiquette, right? So depending on how people's experience of you, that's how they're going to think of you as good. But are you good or not? No, you're just a human being, right? And what I had to come to the conclusion is being human isn't an evil thing, You know what I mean? So if I'm not, if good is not a fixed thing, it's not a fixed characteristic, but a subjective characteristic based on how people experience me, then why would I base my idea of who I am based on what other people think of me? Right now, we see this a lot when we deal with people who are complacent in their wretchedfulness and their disgusting behavior. They're like, oh, only God can judge me. But when we talk about good behavior, now all of a sudden, that's you've arrived, right? So my focus is not on being a good man. My focus is on being a better man, better than I was yesterday. And that process of improvement takes me out of the fixed mindset, right, and into a growth mindset. Well, now there's no limit to my potential because I can always get better. Even if I did my best on this day, I can always do a little bit better. And so I'm reaching for excellence, not in a material sense where I'm trying to become a billionaire, but I'm trying to have a billionaire character, right? And so I think that if men could approach it from that way, first of all, be real. In all the things you could be real. The religion you practice does not uphold this concept of a good man, right? But good acts, do good things in the world, right? Stop talking about being good and just be good. You know what I mean? According to your definition, but the same men, and this, not to be soapboxes, but the same men that will talk about being a good man are the same men that will say, "Oh yeah, if that goes down, and I'm not doing nothing. I'm not getting involved. I got to get home." You know what I'm saying? This not the time to be good. There's only certain convenient times to be good. Apparently, only between the hours of 5 and 7, I can be good, but otherwise, I can't get involved.
And only for perfect women who live up to exactly what you say they should be.
Right.
The other thing is that I think the idea in patriarchy is that women are silly and naive and need to be protected. And so a lot of men seem to want a woman to be very naive with him, and then he'll protect her from the world. But why would you want a naive woman, especially if you're going to have children with her? What if something happens to you? She's going to trust the next man to move him right in on your children, right? So if I immediately open up to you, I'm like, yeah, I trust you automatically, even though you're going to tell me the men are unsafe. My father's going to tell me the men are unsafe. But for some reason, they want you to treat them differently, recognize this, and just lay over for me. And I find it very odd. I'm like, but these are not, this is what I'm saying. These are men who are supposed to be unpacking, who are reading feminist literature, who understand, who say the thing, but treat me different, which I guess comes down to that idea of, yeah, I'm a good man, and do you recognize it? Can you see me? But if you're a good man, if you're trying to be a good man, that's gonna come out in the wash. We're gonna see that over time. You don't have to say it. You can just be the good man, and I'm gonna, like Monique was saying the other day, that man never even said anything about her sitting at the head of the table, which I think is ridiculous. Sit wherever you want. But because of the way he treated her, one day she just moved. And even someone like me, super, super feminist, when someone treats me well, I do all types of stuff for them. But if someone was to say, you go cook and clean for me and you did, I'm gonna be like, I am not doing that. But anyway, that gets into it. My other point was about Black women. This thing they say about Black women being hard, not being soft, not being nurturing, is such obvious BS. Anyone who knows Black women, your aunties, your mama, your grandma, the hardest women are the softest, are the most nurturing, are the one you can lean on. So it's as if they've never met Black women, because our softness is not expressed like YT women or what patriarchy says it should be. We're strong, we're direct, we're but also super soft, and especially for men. We really let men get away with just about anything in our families and communities. But they sit here and say we're all hard and not, and I'm like, have you met a Black woman?
No, that's facts. That's absolutely true. There was a period where I had seen like several of my friends like get into relationships with men who were like great for them, right? And like these are friends of mine who were much more focused, school goals, career, etc., and accomplished them. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm always shouting my friends out for their successes. But like they got with these into the situations they got with men, and like I got to see a side of my friends I had never seen before, right? Like genuinely never seen before, right? Like in one of my friends, she's a doctor, right? And like when I say very focused, very intelligent, like the girl is brilliant, right? and like she's always like, no nonsense, no bullshit. But like she get with him, and like he brings out a side of her that's like the softest, most playful, childlike, not childish, but like childlike energy I've ever seen her in, right? And it was like beautiful to see. And I thought to myself, that statement that black women are masculine and hard, not no, they're just one protecting themselves when they're not being, when they need to be safe around people. And then two, like that hardness is oftentimes just an exterior shell, right? Like there's a very soft center and core. And like you said, very nurturing, very caring, very loving to people that treat them well. And like I got to see that like firsthand in so many cases now. So that's a very, very good point, Summer.
I feel like we conduct ourselves as men, as black men, as if we are the only people that experience racism. Like I really, on a subconscious level, I feel like some black men feel like black men are the only group of people in the diaspora that experience racism, right? Black women experience the same racism that we did, right? The same discrimination, the same oppression, the same violence. You know what I mean? If not more. And so historically, if you look at because of the way history is written, right? A lot of times the question of what were black women doing when is never asked, right? It's only, the civil rights movement, things of that nature are written from a black male perspective. Even if like the majority of Black Panthers were women, it's focusing on these key black male figures in the black, not even and the black women are just supporting actors in this movement, right? Coretta Scott King, going back to Jonathan Majors, Coretta Scott King is just a supporting actor, for Martin Luther King. She's not an activist in her own right. She's a supporting actor, right? So because we look at history that way, we are surprised when we realize that, yeah, if you go through that type of oppression decade over decade over decade, you have to have a little bit thicker skin to deal with that, right? Now, black women may have, evolved through that in a different way than black men, but it's still there, right? Black women didn't have the what's the era? They didn't have the housewife era, what I'm saying, of the 1940s, 50s, what I mean, that you think they did. They were doing day work. They were the reason why white women could live this idyllic lifestyle, because they were the ones that went and cleaned the house, right? So they were still working. There was not a portion of American history where black women had the luxury of being soft, or of just being taken care of. Now, there may have been individual black women, yeah, but at the same time, when they step outside the door, they're still dealing with that same, colored water fountain, the same experience, right? So we have to go back as black men and look at history through the lens of a black woman's eyes, really, and try to experience, okay, what was that like? It's interesting. I don't even know if black men think of Harriet Tubman as a woman. Like, I don't think we see that. We see her as Black Moses, right? 2-6, what I mean? But I don't know if we really look at, this was a woman who did this. It's a black woman that did this. Black women got guns and went and got back people and liberated them. We don't even think about her femininity in that movement, right? This is why Sojourner Truth was like, ain't I a woman? That whole concept comes up. So we have to look at that. So yeah, black women are gonna love different than any other woman. But that's great. There's no other woman that's gonna, relate to your experience in other than someone who went through it with you. You know what I mean? So we're cutting off our hand, foot, head, limbs, heart, in not empathizing with black women. You know what I mean? And trying to understand where they're coming from, and not just from a current contemporary perspective. Because when you look at just the last 2 years, if that's your only experience of the black experience, feminism is everywhere, and they're trying to they don't respect the black man and all this other stuff. It's like, wait a minute. You can look at a video, and there's several videos out there on TikTok right now, 1971, having the same exact conversation we're having right now and getting the same lame feedback from black men. Women asking the same question. Do you see me as human? But what if I want to have a career? Well, what if I have an idea that's better than yours? How do you handle that? And they give the same answer. So that means for 50 years, black men have not learned anything historically about black women. They're still regurgitating, or at least they're not teaching it to other men. So how could you expect anything different from black women if you're giving them the same stuff over and over again for the last 50, 60 years and beyond?
And beyond, indeed. Real quick, someone asked in the comments at Vanity, were you gonna like record the live so that people could catch the replays if they missed it?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of getting them on YouTube. I got to do some editing to them because these are several. I have a whole nother conversation with LeBeau Colbert where we talk about the so-called masculine black woman. But those series will be on YouTube and on Spotify. As soon as I get them up, I'll do a video. Until then, I've been chopping them up and putting them on my TikTok. So the Will to Change project, and then that's there in like, each question has its own little segment. So just check my page, and then as soon as I have them all up on YouTube and on Spotify, I'll give an announcement for that. So make sure you follow me and check my page, and I'll make that announcement.
Definitely follow him. He has great content, y'all know.
Yeah, really great content. Thank you all. Top down, I've been listening, but it's good to hear men saying the things. And I think that, I don't know what's going to happen. Most of us have just kind of divested, decentered. But I hope that, a lot of the men continue to grow and change and learn. And it ain't on me. So I mostly avoid men, but I'm rooting for you. That's it.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it indeed.
So I didn't see any recent questions. I don't know if we missed any questions. Probably did miss one or two. If you all want to repost them, if we missed your question. But Onyx, did you have any final thoughts? I don't want to keep you longer. I know I promised 2 hours. We didn't go on three and some change. I appreciate you, your stamina and staying with me. But I think it's an important conversation to have, and I think we covered a lot of good ground. One thing I didn't mention, which I can't get off this live and not mention, the way police handle great. There's so many great kits that go just years, just not even looked at, and these are confirmed rapists. And we just don't do anything, and it contributes to that 2 to 3% conviction rate that you talked about. Is because it's confirmed, the study's been done, the evidence is there, and we just don't move forward with it because we're so busy, we're so backed up. And I think that's another part, is that our legal system just is not set up to take women seriously, and to take this crime seriously. And because it only happens to, or not to say it only happens to, but because, I don't even want to put it because on that. I just want to say that needs to change, as far as that's concerned.
And also, even that we don't take it serious when we do convict the person and give them time. You remember Brock Turner, the YT man that raped the woman at the college campus, behind a dumpster or something.
Oh,
he only got 6 months, but served 3 months of it and got off, and got to go. And you know why? Because the judge said his future would be damaged by this case if he's in jail for a long time.
Man, isn't that nice for a judge to think about someone's future in their sentencing? That's absurd.
He got 6 months and was out in 3. That's crazy. That's crazy. But yeah, the whole thing does make a change.
21 said great kits in Detroit revealed over 800 serial offenders from the kits that were processed. Obsidian said he's so rich he couldn't understand what he was doing. What?
That's 800 repeat serial offenders?
Yeah.
That's insanity.
Jesse J says, will you guys collab and do an intense anti-misogyny course for men? I'm open to it, my friend. Let's talk.
I have this question here. Question for black men. What is the ROI you receive for not supporting black women? What's the win? This is the question I'll be trying to ask people. Do you consider what the future result of our actions today, how we interact with our the women in our community, do you perceive that those are going to result in like positive benefits for our community? Like, and be so serious, right? Like, be like so
Yeah.
serious. No, like they're absolutely not. Like the
But
way that we treat each other is wild. The way that we will speak to women in our community and expect them to just be like cool with, or like, oh, that's, how like, that's insanity. And the way that we have relegated their role in our society, in our community, to what we think they should be doing, and then blaming them for the collapse of, like, it's like, do you think the results of any of this is going to be positive? Like, logically speaking. Like, no, not at all. So why are you continuing down this path, right? And like, we've seen it get, because like, look at how things have gotten from 2020, when like Kevin Samuels like really hit, right, to now. Like, have they gotten better? No. Like, not at all. They've gotten worse. Like, it's very clear, right? It's very logical for the people who claim to be so logical, right? It's gotten worse, and it's only going to continue to get worse if we continue down the same path. But like, they refuse to see that.
and I think that's in part because we're socialized not to necessarily think or even focus on the community. We're only focused on ourselves. We're focused on my family, my legacy, right? Children aren't children to be human. They're human to be a function of your legacy, right? So I only want what's mine, mine. And and because of that, what I mean, a lot of the community falls to the wayside, what I mean, or the community is just a function of how I can bring more resources to me. That has to change fundamentally first. What I mean, we have to think about community at least alongside us. What I mean, you definitely have to take care of yourself. What I mean, and you should definitely take care of your family. But then there's also the environment that your family is going to grow up in, and I think that's the short sightedness of the whole. I only protect what's mine, because you can't protect your wife, your daughter, 24/7 unless you're gonna put them in a prison. You know what I mean? And there are some cultures out there, as somebody kind of glorify that. Whoa, my culture, a woman is always assaulted by a man from the family, and it's like that's a prison. You know what I mean? But sooner or later, your woman, the woman that you say belongs to you, is going to encounter a man that she doesn't belong to, and how is he going to treat her, right? But if we as men say, hey, wait a minute, hey, we've all got these things called families, and we all care about our families. How about we all take care of each other so that our families can all be safe around our other families? You know what I mean? Like, that's what a community is.
I say to people, like, and when people say this phrase that the basis or foundation of a community is healthy families, I'm always like very hesitant to say that, because no, the basis of a community is people that care about each other and want to see each other win, right? Want to see each other safe, want to see each other healthy, right? You don't have to be blood related for that. You don't, right? The basis of any community is people that care about each other and want to see each other do well, right? If you have a bunch of families who are just families but separate, like which we have right now, that's why I like hesitate to call us the Black community anymore, right? We're like the Black congregation, right? Like, we really not together anymore, because you just have a bunch of families, dysfunctional or otherwise, that don't care about each other, right? So we won't have community even if we had all functional families, if we don't care about the family across the street and next door. You know what I'm saying? And that's what that boils down to. I can't really say I care about the people in my family if I'm not out in the community making it safer for them.
Whoever wins is the one that writes the history. How did they do it will forever be a mystery. Winning is the mindset you keep when you won't accept defeat. And I repeat, I'm the creator of my sheet. I got some images in my head I don't bother to touch. Anxious cause you don't know who is who and what is what. Setting fires to bridges, yeah, I'm keeping all doors shut. Find solace in being separate cause it's therapeutic. So when you're claiming that you victim, make sure you're the plaintiff. You gon' hear me when I tell you I ain't nothing to play with. I sing it to you in a soft tone, but I got grit. Heard some niggas been talking and listen to what they said, and I'm just mad that she ain't give it to me. And that girl Yon was great when I liked her, but now she ain't with a thing. He said he ain't a fan of marriage, but he passing out rings. Fraudulent, making money, selling off bad dreams. I'm locked up in my head thinking I'm toxic. If you talking down bad, then you may as well just gon' switch up your topic. I ain't got no love for you, gon' stop it. You a thespian and putting up in that, gon' drop it.